In this guide, we'll update you on New York's best attractions for 2025, as well as what's brand new, plus some tips on navigating the city like a local and the many changes coming to the Big Apple. Make sure to watch this before your trip. You can sit on a crowded tour bus, or you can be guided in a 1920s era car. I think a decision's pretty easy.
It's a 1930 Hudson Gray 8, the Hudson Company's first sports car. What do you say we get some photos in front of it?
Let's do it.
Okay, but before we do, I have some 20s accessories to get you in the mood. You're gonna be a celebrity for the next 50 minutes. This car gets a lot of attention. You're gonna get a lot of AOKs, thumbs ups, a lot of waves. Just think of them as paparazzi when you're the celebrities here. Arnold Rothstein was the king of New York gamblers. He loved to gamble. He ran casinos in Times Square, and he bet on horses upstate. Made a lot of money. Jimmy Fallon came up to the car in a rock car. We did a custom pickup and drop off for British supermodel Cara Delevingne.
Normally we visit New York City attractions. Today we are the attraction.
You have to be stuck in Midtown Manhattan traffic. This is the way to do it. I'm not even noticing the traffic. I don't think I've ever been in a car this old before. Are you?
No, well, my grandpa's, but I don't think it was this old.
Now that statue you see with a Tiffany clock, I think it's the largest Tiffany clock in the world. It depicts Hercules, Minerva, and Mercury, the gods of strength, wisdom, and speed.
That was like stepping back in time, literally and figuratively. I've never taken a driving tour quite like that one.
Just made us feel like we wanted to go back in time for real.
New York has dozens of boat tours, but I don't think any will give you the insights that the official NYC architecture cruise will. We're going to explore the 6th borough, the waterfront. This is very classy. It's a 1920s style yacht we're on. If you are into history, this is the boat tour for you. We have a real architect who is narrating the entire skyline as we go.
So we're going to be traveling about 30 miles, going all the way around the island of Manhattan. Two towers connected by a sky bridge. That sky bridge houses amenity space for the apartment complex, including a 75-foot lap pool. So you can swim back and forth from tower to tower, 300 feet in the air. That green you see is patinated copper, very thin copper sheets, about the thickness of 2 pennies.
Something super unique about this tour is we are way up the Harlem River right now. I've never been on a boat this far up, and we're passing 18 bridges in total. We are wrapping back towards the Hudson River, and it feels like we're on a fall foliage cruise. It's beautiful views. Doesn't even feel like we're in New York anymore. I've driven over the George Washington Bridge hundreds of times. I have never gone underneath by boat. I'm even excited for this.
Tallest tower at Hudson Yard, to the left of the vessel and set back there.
Less than 30 people on board, intimate experience. I learned so much. It takes a lot for a tour to impress me. This impressed me a lot. As a first-time tourist, there's a lot of pressure to visit an observation deck. Now, we did an entire video visiting all 5 in one day if you need an in-depth look at each of them, and I'll reveal my personal favorite at the end, but I think all 5 have some benefits. One World Observatory. This is the highest viewing point in the Western Hemisphere, atop One World Trade, and it's entirely indoors if you don't want to be exposed to the elements. I also think the elevator ride up is by far the best one in the city, showing you how New York was built. Its location at the bottom of Manhattan gives you some clear views of the horizon. My issue with it, I really think you need to step outside at least a little bit, and you don't have that option here. Next, the Empire State Building. This is the most famous building in the United States, maybe the world, so it's got that star factor, and I appreciate the Art Deco vibes all over. This observation deck has grown on me in recent visits. I think for history buffs, this is a can't miss. The Edge Sky Deck. Well, this wins the award for highest outdoor sky deck in the Western Hemisphere, and the views from the angled glass are quite unique. It gives you the feeling like you're floating in midair, and if you're willing to shell out $201 a person, you could do City Climb, where you literally lean off a skyscraper. top of the Rock. This is probably the most underrated observation deck because it only goes 70 floors up, which is the shortest vantage point, but the Danny DeVito of observation decks packs a big punch because it's right in the middle of the Midtown skyscraper scene, making you feel more part of it. And it's my second favorite. Summit One Vanderbilt. This is my personal favorite because you get what I truly consider an indoor attraction with a glass mirrors and reflections everywhere and a few other neat rooms, and then an opportunity to go outside and still enjoy the skyline, optional elevator ride ascent to the top if you're feeling daring. But all of these observation decks are bookable in the description, and it's really tough to go wrong with any of them. Now you may be wondering, why is the High Line not in this video? Well, this is just paid attractions. We're gonna have a free attraction video coming up soon. Broadway is the world's most famous theater district, and I would say it can't miss when you're in the city. Even living here, I get excited to go, and Adriana and I just recently booked tickets to see MJ the Musical for the first time. Now, I'm a huge fan of 70s and 80s music, and I have to give them credit. The choreography and songs were on point. They play over 25 of Michael Jackson's greatest hits, and it's won some Tony Awards. But from musicals to plays, remakes of old movies like Back to the Future, there is something for everybody on Broadway. And if you want to learn more about attending a Broadway show, check out this video we recently filmed with a Broadway insider on the topic. There's few museums in the world you know exactly where they are just based off their name. The Louvre in Paris, the Smithsonian in DC, and the Met in New York. It's the largest art museum in the Americas and welcomes over 3 million visitors a year, and well, you could spend a whole day in there. Although in this video we shot last year, we show you how to do it right in just 2 hours. The Temple of Dender is my personal favorite, but you can find Van Gogh, Rembrandt, Vermeer, and the list goes on and on. Insider tip, head to the rooftop for a really amazing view of Central Park. And if you're a big fan of art, I recommend booking a guide. See the link in the description if you're interested. The symbol of American freedom, the Statue of Liberty. And this is probably the most famous attraction in the city. Now, I will note that visiting the statue in Ellis Island, which is included in the ticket, will eat up at least half a day. So it may not be worth doing if you have a very limited time in the city, but the whole experience can give you goosebumps, starting with taking the ferry over to Liberty Island and having the same view that millions of immigrants had approaching New York Harbor. And just admiring the statue up close is really special. But I've said this on many videos, if you can book a ticket to get inside of the crown, it is well worth it. Because walking up that narrow staircase and seeing the inner workings of the sculpture, capped off with a view through the crown, is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But you normally have to book this months in advance, and you have to do it on the Statue Cruises website. And yes, you can see the statue for free by taking the Staten Island Ferry, but if you can budget the time for it, it is certainly worth it. New York has world-class art museums and a world-class history and science museum. The American Museum of Natural History. Maybe you recognize the facade from Night at the Museum with Ben Stiller. I still think this is one of the best places for families with children to visit. What's not to love? I mean, who doesn't get excited about dinosaur fossils? Or how about the massive 21,000-pound model of a blue whale? And here's a little tip. Don't miss out on the brand new Gilder Center wing, which we featured on a video as one of New York's top new attractions in the past year. The architecture is breathtaking, and they've got some amazing add-ons like a live butterfly vivarium and an immersive invisible worlds experience, which do have extra admission charges. There's also an insectarium. They'll make learning fun, I promise. Families or anyone with a love for science definitely needs to give this a look. Where are my history buffs at? The Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum should be on your radar. Pun fully intended, because this is a decommissioned aircraft carrier that even served in the Pacific during World War II. Yep, this thing has stories. You're not just staring at photos on a wall. You are face to face with historic aircraft or a prototype of the Space Shuttle Enterprise. How about my personal favorite, the Growler, a formerly commissioned submarine? You get to feel what it was like to live inside there. If you have an interest in military history, the Intrepid is a fantastic choice. If you want to see New York from a completely different perspective, then the iconic Five Bridges bike tour is the answer. It's a guided tour with a native New Yorker, Rick, who will be talking in your ear the whole time. You'll be e-biking over 5 iconic bridges, including including the Williamsburg, Manhattan, and Brooklyn bridges. And while I'm someone that generally isn't that confident in biking in the city, Rick made it super simple, and I saw New York in a completely different light. You'll bike through a lot of neighborhoods that you probably wouldn't have visited otherwise, and you'll definitely get pictures and perspectives that no other tour will offer. And if this tour isn't for you, Rick also offers e-bike tours around Central Park and other famous spots in the city, so give his website a look, tell him I said hi. I may be just a little bit biased here since I'm a Yankees fan, but a trip to Yankee Stadium is a true New York experience. Now here's a little secret the Yankees don't advertise too much. You can bring your own food into the stadium for individual consumption. So if you're on a budget, you can stop at a local bodega or deli and grab food to go. But they do have some fantastic concessions like the 99 burger named after Aaron Judge or a classic steak sandwich from LaBelle's. And well, the team lately hasn't been great, but it's still a fun time. Sit in the bleachers if you're young and want a more lively vibe. And don't sleep on the Yankees Museum inside. It's free and has some incredible memorabilia. NYC is finishing many new super interesting attractions in 2025 that you need to know about. These new projects are so exciting they will fill up with crowds as soon as they open, so I want you to hear about them first. Especially the new pool being opened up in the East River. The plan is for Plus Pool to open in the summer of 2025, and it's a game changer for New York City. For centuries, New Yorkers swam in the East and Hudson rivers until pollution and new buildings along the shore made it too dangerous. Now there's a new idea called Plus Pool. Instead of trying to clean the entire river, why not just filter a small section of it for swimming? Using a high-tech filtration system, Plus Pool will remove germs and meet safety standards. Plus Pool will be located off Pier 35 in the Lower East Side, and it recently got a $16 million boost from the city and state. This funding came in part thanks to Governor Hochul's efforts to give more New Yorkers safe places to swim again. Now, will I be diving in on opening day? Definitely not, but I'm very curious to see how this plays out, especially given the East River's not-so-clean reputation. What do you think? Would you take the plunge? Well, it's finally happening. New York is getting its 6th observation deck set to open sometime in 2025. The iconic 25-story building at One Times Square. Yes, the spot where the New Year's Eve ball drops is undergoing a major redevelopment. They're planning to open a viewing deck to the public and a museum taking up the first 6 floors. This is huge because it'll be the first time in decades that most of the building's interior is open for everyone to explore. Along with the museum and the observation deck, you'll find 12 floors of high-tech brand activations. The museum will dive deep into the history of Times Square and the beloved ball drop tradition. So come 2025, you'll have an actual reason to spend more time in Times Square. A new light show is coming to the east side of Manhattan to replace Field of Light. It's called Path of Liberty, That Which Unites Us, and it's set to debut on the 6 acres between 38th and 41st Streets on 1st Ave in the spring of 2025. This outdoor exhibit features 45 giant screens that, as an official press release explains, will show amazing photos and audio stories, thought-provoking documentaries, and interactive elements. Each screen explores our nation's history, progress, challenges, and successes. Filmmaker Daniela Vale led this production. She traveled all across the country to capture the interviews and portraits you'll see. You can expect to meet people like a World War II veteran, small-scale farmers, national park rangers, a retired New York Fire Department lieutenant, union transit workers, and many more. No word yet on admission costs, although if it's anything like Field of Light was, it will be free and have time tickets. If you visited Anne Frank's house in Amsterdam for the first time ever, they're having a special exhibition outside of the Netherlands in New York. Visitors will be immersed in a full-scale recreation of the annex rooms where Anne Frank, her parents and sister, and 4 other Jewish inhabitants spent 2 years hiding to evade Nazi capture, and where she wrote her famous diary. The exhibition is a limited engagement scheduled to close on April 30th, 2025. Tickets are available at annefrankexhibit.org. Adult admission starts at $23, and it will be at the Center for Jewish History north of Union Square. There's lots of new Broadway shows opening in 2025 you need to know about. Where are my Stranger Things fans at? Stranger Things: The First Shadow is a play based on the Netflix TV show and coming to the Big Apple after a successful run on London's West End. Opening night is April 1st. It's a prequel. The play takes place in 1959 Hawkins and follows younger versions of the adult characters from the Netflix show, including Joyce, Hopper, and Bob Newby. Buena Vista Social Club is a Broadway musical created about the making of the famous 1997 Grammy Award-winning album and tells the stories of the legends who lived it. Produced by John Leguizamo, a world-class Afro-Cuban band joins a sensational cast of musicians, actors, and dancers from around the world for an authentic experience unlike any you've seen or heard before. This one sounds like a lot of fun. I predict one of the hottest tickets for Broadway in 2025 will be Shakespeare's Othello, which is starring two big-time Hollywood stars, Denzel Washington and Jake Gyllenhaal. Opening March 23rd and with a limited run until June 8th, tickets won't be cheap, but this could be a special performance. Glengarry Glen Ross for fans of the movie and Tony Award-winning show. This is coming back to Broadway March 31st. The play is set in a cutthroat Chicago real estate office where four salespeople compete to sell mostly worthless properties to unwitting customers. Whoever sells the most wins a car. Whoever sells the least is out of a job. Starring Kieran Culkin, Bob Odenkirk, and Bill Burr, I'm such a fan of the movie that I've already bought tickets myself. Waiting for Godot. It's not another Bill and Ted reunion, but Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter team up in this play that explores themes of existentialism, the passage of time, and the human condition, often through absurd and darkly humorous dialogue. Boop, the musical, based on the animated character Betty Boop. Betty's dream of an ordinary day off from the super celebrity in her black and white world leads to an extraordinary adventure of color, music, and love in New York City. Operation Mincemeat for my fans of history, this World War II musical about a stolen corpse and how it turned the tide of the war in favor of the Allies. This sold out so many theaters in London before it ended up on the West End to rave reviews. I may have to see this one myself. Opening night is March 20th. You all know how much we love food on this channel. The Shaver Hall Food Court could be a big deal in 2025. Opening in the former Lord & Taylor flagship store in Midtown, Shaver Hall is 35,000 square feet and set to open in the spring. It will include 2 restaurants, 2 full-service bars, 11 vendors, and a bodega, delivering a wide array of culinary options and live entertainment within a dynamic atmosphere. Some early vendor names are Carroll Gardens Pizza Legends F&F, Chick Chick, a Korean spot, and Taqueria Al Pastor, an authentic Mexican eatery. If you're in New York during the winter, one of the coolest celebrations takes place for the Lunar New Year. In Chinatown, they'll be celebrating the Year of the Snake on Sunday, February 16th at 1 p.m. Viewers can expect a colorful celebration featuring floats, bands, and performers representing different communities and cultures. Event organizers anticipate more than 25,000 people to take part in the procession. Always a great time. New York's most famous hotel is coming back. Following a comprehensive renovation, the legendary Waldorf Astoria Hotel is set to reopen this spring. The revitalization seeks to harmonize its timeless Art Deco elegance with modern updates, reaffirming its position as a premier venue for luxury accommodations in the city. And if you just look at their website, this could be interesting. You can even start your bookings for September already, and I checked in October with the cheapest room starting at $1,600 a night. Even though I can't afford it, don't let me stop you from booking it. We actually filmed a video there 7 years ago, right before it closed, and I am very curious to see how this reopening goes. This could be the most expensive hotel in New York again. Originally slated for a 2024 opening, we've got another interesting hotel coming to the Big Apple, this one with a Latin flair. Faena, which already has locations in Miami and Buenos Aires, this luxury hotel and cultural center is now scheduled to open in the spring of 2025. Each Faena property uses Art Deco style and adds a touch of fantasy and fun. It'll be located next to the High Line, and it hopes to bring together art, entertainment, and great places to stay. This property will have 120 rooms and suites, exciting places to eat and drink, and lively nightlife events. This one doesn't sound cheap either, but it's an interesting and trendier alternative to the Waldorf's reopening. Central Park has something new coming this spring called the Davis Center at the Harlem Meer. It's an 11-acre rec center which costs $160 million and is one of the park's largest undertakings in history. It will have the 8th biggest swimming pool in New York City and an
ice rink with a grassy field when it's not ice skating season. It'll be open all year, and the main goal is to help people feel closer to nature. There will be activities for all ages, giving visitors a chance to explore the ravine's woods, enjoy a newly restored stream, and walk on a new boardwalk along the Harlem Mere shore. Central Park is already my favorite park in the city. With additions like this, it just keeps getting better and better. This comes as no shock to my hardcore soccer, football fans, for my non-Americans watching, but the FIFA Club World Cup is coming to MetLife Stadium next summer across the Hudson in New Jersey, and it's easily accessible from Midtown Manhattan by public transit. Not to be confused with the World Cup, the FIFA Club World Cup shows 32 teams from the 6 continental confederations. MetLife Stadium is hosting 9 games, including the finals. I recommend buying your tickets soon. FC Porto is playing multiple games at MetLife, and who knows, maybe Real Madrid will be in the finals. The Studio Museum in Harlem is reopening in a new location after a 7-year absence. Established by a diverse group of artists, community advocates, and generous supporters, the Studio Museum in Harlem arose from the urgent need to confront the near-total absence of African-descendant artists in major museums, commercial galleries, schools, and academic research. The new building will provide extensive exhibitions, education, and program spaces and public amenities never before enjoyed by the museum. It's set to open in the fall of 2025. Where are my sports fans at? Fanatics Fest is coming back to the Javits Center from June 20th to the 22nd. Fanatics Fest NYC is a fully immersive event that celebrates the excitement of being a sports fan. Over 3 days, attendees can explore hands-on experiences from major leagues like the NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, WNBA, and WWE, while meeting more than 500 athletes, creators, and celebrities. Visitors will find interactive stations, autograph signings, live panel discussions, exclusive merchandise releases, and one of the largest trading card shows in the world. Last year, Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, and Jalen Brunson were signing autographs. Who knows who'll be there in 2025? And speaking of conventions, New York Comic-Con is back from October 9th to 12th at the Javits Center as well. It's a massive pop culture convention celebrating comics, movies, TV, anime, gaming, and more. It has all the usuals: star-studded panels and screenings, meet top comic book creators, a huge marketplace of collectibles, cosplay showcases, interactive experiences and exhibits, plus fan meetups and workshops. I recommend buying tickets the day they go on sale. The most famous zoo in New York, the Bronx Zoo, has a big announcement. A new exhibit is coming all about nocturnal animals. All we know so far is that it will be called World of Darkness and open in the summer of 2025. From the website, these are the only clues we have. All over our planet, animals have evolved a variety of fascinating body features, behaviors, and senses to help them survive in the dark. This summer, step into the dark with us and discover the mysteries, adaptations, and surprises of wildlife thriving in darkness. If you need an excuse to visit the Bronx Zoo, this is definitely it. The New York Botanical Garden has made some big announcements for 2025. The first large-scale floral exhibition will be the Orchid Show, Mexican Modernism, from February 15 through April 27, 2025. Step into a world inspired by Mexico City, where old traditions and modern style come together in stunning displays of orchids. As you walk through the garden, you'll see thousands of these beautiful flowers, showing off Mexico's wide range of plants and its rich cultural past. Inspired by the bright, bold designs of famous Mexican modernist architect Luis Barragan, on certain Sunday nights, visitors who are 21 or older can enjoy Orchid Nights. This special event includes music, dancing, cash bars, and delicious food you can buy. Another installation to watch for is Van Gogh Painting with Flowers, which runs from May 24th through October 26th. You'll enjoy the bright colors and beauty of the same flowers that inspired Vincent van Gogh's most famous paintings. Stroll through a stunning garden filled with huge, vibrant sunflowers and see real-life floral recreations of Van Gogh's masterpieces, which have been admired in museums all around the world. It's like stepping into the world of Van Gogh's art as you walk among these living works. This unforgettable show blends art and nature, celebrating one of history's most famous artists in a fresh, exciting way. There's a new hockey team in New York, and since 2024 was such a massive year for women's sports, with the WNBA's New York Liberty winning the title, give a look to the New York Sirens women's hockey team, which plays at the Prudential Center, the home of the New Jersey Devils, and is just a quick ride over from Manhattan. This is a little sci-fi for the channel, but there were some wild announcements about travel between the two mega cities of New York and London coming soon, perhaps. The New York Post had an article about a Texas aerospace company called Venus Aerospace that is working on a plane called the Stargazer that would travel about 6 times the speed of sound and reach much higher altitudes. This hypersonic jet could get travelers from New York City to London in under an hour. Not only will passengers on the hypersonic jet travel faster, but they'll also soar higher, up to 110,000 feet, high enough to actually see the Earth's curve. This is obviously years away from ever becoming a reality, but it was just announced. This second idea sounded even cooler to me. A 60-minute train ride from New York to London via a transatlantic tunnel. Just a fantasy? Maybe? Picture a tunnel stretching an incredible 3,400 miles, far longer than the 23.5-mile Channel Tunnel between France and England. Inside this futuristic tube, trains would travel in a vacuum, letting them reach unbelievable speeds of up to 3,000 miles per hour without air slowing them down. While it sounds amazing, the cost is just as huge, with experts estimating a price tag of around $17.4 trillion to make it happen. Not sure if this one's happening in our lifetime, but just the idea is so intriguing, even Elon Musk wants to potentially get involved. Until then, the 7-hour flight between New York and London is the quickest way for now.
Visiting New York can be intimidating for first-timers, and there's certain unspoken rules and customs that newbies tend to break many times without realizing it. In this video, we'll share all of them and even a few bonuses so your next trip here is free from any embarrassing or possibly expensive mistakes. As a tourist, you are far more likely to get hit by a bike than you are by a car. In my 13 years living in New York, I have never come close to being hit by a car, and 2 or 3 times I almost got hit by a bike. And I wasn't even walking in the bike lane. Always be aware of where the bike lanes are in the city, because the cyclists already have a chip on their shoulder for so many cars and pedestrians ignoring this. If you stand here and try to take a photo or just don't pay attention to it, best case scenario, you're gonna get a warm New York City welcome and learn a few new curse words. Worst case scenario, you are gonna get crashed into, and it is gonna be very painful. And this video is not sponsored by any kind of travel insurance, so you just don't wanna get into that. So sometimes it's a little bit tricky to find, but the easiest way to find the bike lane is to look down like this and you can see it, or better yet, see where all the cyclists are heading. But never ever stand in the middle of this. This drives locals crazier than anything, and is one of the main reasons they love to avoid the Times Square area, and that's traffic flow and how to walk properly on a congested city street. Now this actually takes a little bit of effort. If let's say you have 4 people in your group, what you don't want to do is walk all 4 across, because you are going to be stopping all the people behind you from walking around. You need to be in groups of 2 maximum. And right now, Times Square is not that busy because it's February, but if you're here during a peak period, you will understand exactly what I mean. And this advice goes for all of New York. And what you never ever want to do is stop in the middle of the sidewalk to take a photo or to look for directions. That is the quickest way to get New Yorkers angry at you. And later on in this video, we're going to talk about some similar concepts underground on the subway. I'm going to share a first-hand experience that occurred about a month ago when I went to MJ the Musical, and this is about Broadway etiquette. Now, I was surrounded by many tourists, and halfway through the show, there were about 2 teens sitting next to Adriana and I, and they started to play with their phones in the middle of the show. And let me tell you, when it's super dark in a theater and somebody's looking at their phone, it is completely distracting and disrespectful. And shame on those parents for not realizing what was going on. The big unspoken rule here is do not play with your phone during a Broadway show. And if you're a parent, make sure that your children have the attention span to sit through an entire performance or find out if there's an intermission or not, to avoid situations like that. And if you need even more Broadway tips and tricks, check out the video we shot with a Broadway insider giving you the lowdown. Carmine's Fine Italian Dining, which brings me to tipping, which is something that so many tourists get frustrated with visiting New York. It is such a source of complaint that I've even dedicated an entire video to this foreign American concept of tipping. But the #1 spot I hear about tourists having problems is not even at restaurants, it's at bars, because you are dealing directly with the bartender, and if you do not leave a tip for your drink, you're gonna hear about it. My general rule of thumb is tip $1 per drink, some say $2 per cocktail. The bartender will be much nicer to you as well. A simple rule for restaurants, tip 20% of the pre-tax total on the bill, assuming your service was good enough. You know, look, I understand the frustration out there because in many other countries, servers are paid living wages, but in the United States, they live off of tips. And while I might not personally be a fan of it, I still adhere to it because when you visit another city, another country, you have to do as the locals do. Something brand new in New York, if you are ordering Uber Eats or DoorDash delivery to your hotel, they have pretty much cut out tipping. This is a recent change where they've just raised fees. Now they have a screen where they only suggest a $1, $2, or $3 tip after the order has been delivered. And I know many New Yorkers now who just don't tip anymore on these apps because the drivers are getting $30 an hour and the fees, well, they've gone up. The weather, every New Yorker's favorite topic. Take it from me as somebody that films outdoors all the time and relies on weather reports daily to know when to film. The weather in New York City is extremely volatile. First of all, Manhattan, you are never far from the water, so you could catch yourself walking on a street that just has a crazy amount of wind and it'll feel 10 to 15 degrees cooler. So I'd say between November even to April, sometimes even into May, having a light jacket with you, a sweater, always a good idea. Another thing is the rain. I try my hardest not to film when it's raining. Even last week, at the last minute, rain popped up into the forecast and we had some of it for about 2 to 3 hours and I was completely unprepared. Having an umbrella with you at all times, never a bad idea. An unspoken rule that every New Yorker knows so well many times from bad experiences is never accept anything when you're walking, especially in Midtown Manhattan. This is how the majority of the scams that we've covered on this channel occur. Don't say yes to a monk handing you a bracelet, to somebody handing you a CD, to a pamphlet, to somebody holding a clipboard. Just keep your eyes locked ahead, avert your gaze. That's the best advice I can give anybody in New York. And if you need even more advice on avoiding scams in the city, watch the whole video we have dedicated to it. Supporting local businesses. I know how easy it is when you travel to go to franchises like Dunkin' Donuts behind me to grab a coffee when you're in a rush, rather than going to one of the local street carts and getting a coffee from a vendor that really relies on the income more. Being a New Yorker, and I think visiting New York, is all about supporting small local businesses like that, and I encourage you to go out of your way to do so. And supporting local businesses is definitely something that'll really make your trip to New York a lot more memorable. In some cultures, it's just commonplace for locals to stare at you. Well, in New York, it is the complete opposite. Minding your own business is something that native New Yorkers especially know all about. So if you see somebody acting erratic, doing weird things, don't stare, don't point at them, just don't get involved. Because if you look at somebody, it could be a trigger for a confrontation, or worse, a signal that you even want to fight. So make sure that you do not stare at strangers here, and don't get involved in conflict here unless you absolutely have no other choice. And don't take a picture with a Hulk and expect him to not charge you 20 bucks for it. Don't take an Uber or a taxi when you can take the subway to get there faster. And don't take the subway when it's quicker and easier to walk. This unspoken rule is broken all the time. Now, I would say if you're considering taking an Uber or a taxi between the hours of 7:30 a.m. to 8 p.m., it's almost always faster to take the subway inside of Manhattan, and a lot cheaper. Let me give you a good example. If I'm at Grand Central and I want to get down to Battery Park, you could take the Express 405 and get there in 13 minutes, 5 stops. That same Uber ride is gonna take you 25 minutes, probably more with traffic, and cost you $30 to $40 versus the $2.90 you would pay taking the subway. Manhattan is so well connected by subway that this example holds true in almost any way you could think of between Midtown to Lower Manhattan. And when it comes to walking during peak hours when traffic is terrible, don't even think about hailing a taxi, and even sometimes waiting for the subway could be 10 minutes or more. If it's crowded, walking down the steps is all gonna eat up your time. And if you could just walk 15 to 20 minutes, I always advise walking, unless the weather's bad. And since you're gonna be riding the subway underground, there's some unspoken rules we definitely have to go over. Let me repeat this for the 10th time on the channel. You do not need to buy a Metro card anymore. It is now official. Even at JFK Airport, the AirTrain supports OmniPay, which is contactless payment from your phone or even from a card with a chip. Now, my wife's brother was visiting from Mexico recently and he was asking me all about this, and I said, as long as you have this enabled in any way, shape, or form, a Metro card is completely useless to you right now. All you need to do is tap your phone or tap your card and you're in. Buying a Metro card, I think it's just an extra step right now. Look, you don't need a Metro card. The Metro card machines even tell you don't need a Metro card anymore. Right from the horse's mouth, okay? So when you're going up an escalator in a subway station in the city, always stay to the right, because if people are in a rush, they're late for a meeting, they're late for court, I don't know what, they want this lane here open. Do not stand to the left unless you are walking quickly. Another unspoken rule broken all the time, and it's really just courtesy, is when people are getting out of the subway, do not block the doors. Stand to the side, let them exit, and then go in. And you would be surprised how often I see people breaking this simple rule, even locals. The subway intercom is likely gonna sound like a toddler babbling right when you need it most, or the train track noise like this is gonna make it impossible to hear what the next stop is. Always be paying attention to how many stops you have left if you don't know the city well. Even a few weeks ago, I missed my stop because I zoned out. It happens to everybody. Don't rely on the conductor's voice,
34th Street.
unless it's clear like that. If the subway is super crowded during rush hour, one advanced tactic is what I'll call pre-walking, is when your station is approaching, standing up and moving towards the door. Because if you wait till the last second, you could run into a sea of people flooding onto the train right as you want to get out. So if you have the time, get up right as your stop is approaching on a busy, busy train. Respecting neighborhoods, and this goes beyond the obvious, like not littering. I'm also talking about your volume and your noise if you're going out at night and going to bars. Now, I used to live at that apartment right there in Greenwich Village for almost a decade, and I can tell you that on weekends, the volume from outside was enough to wake you up unless you had a fan or white noise going, and people would sometimes even open up our garbage area to use the bathroom. That being said, always paying attention when you're out and not being super noisy on the street late at night is going to be very considerate of you when there's people sleeping who have to go to work the next day. Another unspoken rule is if you are going to celebrity houses or even places where celebrities used to live, like Richard Gere's old townhouse behind me, which sold for over $10 million in 2007. If you're a huge Richard Gere fan, you can take a photo of it, that's fine, but don't peer into the windows, don't open the gate, don't stand on their stoops. Realize that people live here and be respectful of that. Richard Gere lived there, Sandra Bullock, Anne Wintour from Vogue is somewhere here. I lived on the poor side of the street. Let's talk fast serve restaurant etiquette, and I'm actually standing in front of my old deli here in the village. If you go to a deli, a bodega, a pizza spot, and there's a long line, make sure you know your order before you get to the front. Step out of line if you have to, because if you're gonna be asking the worker 50 questions while there's 30 hungry construction workers behind you, you're gonna be in for some trouble. That is one thing, respecting people's time. If it's busy, check the menu first. I'm gonna throw one more bonus tip out there. If you're at a small casual eatery, let's give an example, Shujiao Fuzhou Cuisine in Chinatown. They don't have a ton of tables and they're always super busy. What you don't wanna do is sit there after your meal for 20 minutes just chatting if people are waiting for tables. If you're at a finer dining establishment, take your time. They'll let you know if they need the table. But if you're at a small casual place, see if people are waiting for tables and don't sit there and chat for 30 minutes after. And this is something that goes against a lot of cultures. I know even my wife in Mexico loves to do what's called sobremesa after her meal, sit there and chat. You can't do it at all New York eateries, especially popular ones where people need the tables. If you're not from the US, especially Latin America or Europe, listen closely. A lot of tourists run into issues with ordering alcohol. Now, one mistake they make is not bringing ID with them if they look anything under 30. I even sometimes get ID'd. If you go to a restaurant and you order a beer, have either your local ID with you or your passport, just in case. And that advice goes for bars and clubs. Almost every bar in the city, IDs, no matter how old you look. Now, something cool about New York versus where I grew up in northern New Jersey is you can buy beer at CVS, you can buy beer at bodegas, you can buy beer at delis. And at a lot of them, you can even buy single beers from a six-pack, which isn't that common everywhere else in the US. The 50 best free things to do in New York City in 10 minutes. Here we go. Want to impress your friends? The best free rooftop view in the city is on the top floor of the Stavros Niarchos Library in Midtown. Head to the 7th floor and you can get a straight up shot of the Empire State Building and the skyline, no entry or having to buy a drink required. Do you want to take a time machine? Check out the TWA Hotel attached to Terminal 5 at JFK Airport. This used to be the TWA Flight Center and it's a free ticket to the golden era of flight in the 1960s. Why not visit the only olfactory art gallery in the world dedicated to art that has scent? This hidden gem in Chinatown is completely free to pop into during opening hours, and you can sniff your way through all the pleasant aromas, or if you're feeling adventurous, the stinky ones as well. Who is buried at Grant's tomb? I'll let you answer that one, but the largest mausoleum in North America is open to the public and the final resting place of President Ulysses S. Grant and his wife. Greenwood Cemetery was one of New York's most visited landmarks, and we shot an entire video dedicated to showing you the famous sculptures and burial sites of this gem in Brooklyn. Completely free to stroll around if you're into the darker side of history. You don't really need this video to tell you to walk the Brooklyn Bridge, and while it's one of the most crowded tourist destinations in the city, it should be on every first-timer's list. Try to go earlier in the morning if you really want to take better photos and enjoy one of the most famous icons in New York. The Elevated Acre in Lower Manhattan is one of my all-time favorite secret parks. Take the nondescript escalator up and you're surrounded by big buildings and nature at the same time. There's also tremendous views of the East River and Brooklyn Bridge. The 9/11 Memorial is a must-see for any visitor to New York. The two fountains where the towers once stood are majestic, but also a reflective and poignant reminder of one of the saddest days in the country's history. Please, no smiling selfies here. The New York Public Library is a perfect rainy day drop-in. You can admire the ceiling murals upstairs, but the real winner here is the free Polanski exhibition on the ground floor, where you can see the original Winnie the Pooh and a copy of the Declaration of Independence. You can easily budget an hour inside. Times Square is quite obvious, but did you know every night from 11:57 p.m. to 12 a.m. you can watch The Midnight Moment, the world's largest digital public arts program. It's on 92 displays spanning 8 blocks. If you're a night owl, this is worth a quick stopover, as many tourists are completely oblivious that it's even going on. New York has tons of TV shows that need an audience absolutely for free. I even once went to The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and it was a little bit surreal. Check the show's website for details. If you want to see SNL, be prepared to wait in line all day. The Irish Hunger Memorial, dedicated to the Great Famine, is one of those hidden gems that you have to see to believe. They imported all the grass and even an old cottage from the Emerald Isle, and its location in Lower Manhattan makes this a great quick stopover to appreciate all the hardships that Irish immigrants had to endure on their journey to America. Lincoln Center's Summer for the City offers a series of concerts and events outside of the historic music hall. This is an absolutely fantastic way to feel like a local and take in world-class music and culture. We have a whole video dedicated to Central Park. You could spend an entire day exploring America's most famous park, although bring your walking shoes. But at least visit once to find out why both New Yorkers and tourists are so in love with it. Most tourists walk the Brooklyn Bridge, but did you know the Manhattan Bridge has a pedestrian path as well? And you can't see the Brooklyn Bridge from the Brooklyn Bridge, but you certainly can from the Manhattan. New York is the fashion capital of the world, and the museum at FIT has a permanent collection of more than 50,000 garments and accessories. accessories dating from the 18th century to the present. They even recently had an exhibition that showed fashion inspired by food, which sounds right up my alley. Chelsea in Manhattan is home to many of the city's art galleries, and a tradition every Thursday night is opening night for the public with free wine and even food as well. Check out galleriesnow.net for a full list of openings so you can plot an entire evening of art gallery hopping. Another great, absolutely free museum is the National Museum of the American Indian. Learn about the history of Native Americans with some interactive exhibits and plenty to learn for all ages. I can't believe more people don't know about the Elizabeth Street Garden in Soho. This gem of community sculpture garden is under threat of closure and has so many beautiful little nooks to just spend an hour or more relaxing. It feels like you're on some rich philanthropist's country estate. Greenacre Park in Midtown East is such a pleasant surprise. To find a 25-foot waterfall hidden in such a busy area. Haley Park also has a little waterfall, and there's something about these hidden parks in New York that just excite me as a local, because finding peace in the concrete jungle isn't always as easy as you'd think. Only 1 block from Washington Square Park, Washington Mews might be my favorite street in Manhattan. Originally used as a row of stables for horses in the 18th and 19th centuries, it's now part of NYU, and walking this cobblestone path feels like you've been transported to a lost New York City. Fort Tryon Park in Washington Heights is such a magical place to go for a walk. With beautiful views of the Hudson River and George Washington Bridge, it's a local's favorite. Added bonus, take a look at the Cloisters Museum from the outside. It's like staring at an old castle. The High Line is New York's worst kept secret, but I like to say it's my favorite tourist activity to do. Nothing quite like walking on an abandoned train line converted into a gorgeous elevated park. We have an entire video dedicated to the High Line if you want a more structured itinerary. I always said if money was no object, I'd have an apartment in the West Village, because you just can't beat the charming neighborhood vibes. Roaming the beautiful tree-lined blocks and admiring all the cute shops, cafes, and multi-million-dollar homes, Bushwick, Brooklyn is an incredible neighborhood to appreciate the city's street art scene. Take a self-guided walking tour, and you can use Free Tours by Foot's website to admire some of the Bushwick Collective and other artist murals. Another fun summertime activity is movie night in Bryant Park. Now the lawn opens 3 hours early, and I recommend going early to grab the best vantage point. The Staten Island Ferry may be the most famous boat ride in the city. It's completely free. Board and sit on the right side to get a nice view of the Statue of Liberty. The Met 81st Street studio opened last year and is any traveler with children's dream come true. It's absolutely free, located downstairs from the Met Museum, and recommended for ages 3 to 11. It's very interactive and hands-on. During the warmer months, you can go kayaking for free on the Hudson River in Manhattan or East River in Brooklyn. Just sign up in advance online. Pretty surreal to experience the New York skyline for 20 minutes on board a kayak, one of my favorite free activities in this video. Enjoy a free concert at the Juilliard School, which is the world's best performing arts college. See the stars before they perform at places like Carnegie Hall. Check Juilliard's website for the calendar. Summer Stage annually presents nearly 80 free and benefit performances in Central Park and neighborhood parks throughout the 5 boroughs. Check the Summer Stage website for a list of what's free and what's paid, but it's first come, first serve, so plan on arriving early. If you've ever been tired of watching lectures on YouTube, go watch some famous and influential people talk at the New School. They have so many topics available, from economics to social justice and more. See their website for what's coming up. Grand Central Terminal is just full of history. The Constellation mural on the ceiling and the Whispering Gallery in the food court are just some of the fun things you can get into at one of the most beautiful train stations in the world. And after admiring Grand Central, why not walk a few minutes to the Ford Foundation building and explore their free atrium garden in the lobby? It's a tropical rainforest in Midtown Manhattan. Get a Big Apple greeter for free. Seriously, a local New Yorker will be matched with you based on your preferences and if they're available, to show you their favorite spots. No tipping allowed. Consider it a local insider. Check out bigapplegreeter.org for more details. Holy Apostles Soup Kitchen accepts volunteers, including tourists, even for a day. I made a video about my experience there, and if you're into traveling and making a difference, you should consider it. Are you a baseball junkie and love history? Well, the original location of Ebbets Field, home to the Brooklyn Dodgers, is now an apartment complex. But outside of the apartment, you can find a plaque commemorating where home plate once stood. If you find yourself in Prospect Lefferts Gardens, take any baseball fan here for a fun surprise. There's not a lot of neighborhoods on this list, but I think there's something really magical and enchanting about Forest Hills Gardens in Queens. This area was based on the garden cities of the UK, and it feels like you stepped into a Harry Potter movie just walking around. A lot of tourists love going to the free gospel mass in Harlem. What a great way to open the doors to some local culture, and there's 9 different churches that accept walk-ins on Sundays. Check out our latest Harlem food video for where to grab some grub when you're done. If you absolutely need to get some nature before or after your flight out of JFK and Queens, check out the Jamaica Bay Wildlife Refuge with 9,000 acres of open bay, salt marsh, mud flats, upland field and woods. And for bird watchers, nearly half the species in the Northeast have been spotted here in the last 25 years. Go see the Captain America statue located conspicuously in the lobby of a Bed Bath & Beyond in Sunset Park, because we all need to be superheroes to survive a trip to that store. We've got a 2-for-1 special inside the Cultural Services building of the French Embassy. Upstairs is the Albertine bookstore, which besides being the largest French language bookstore in the US, has a beautiful interior with celestial mural above. Then head downstairs to see the Venetian Room, a rare surviving piece of New York's Gilded Age. The Little Red Lighthouse right under the George Washington Bridge is a bit of a trek to get to, but such a cool find. It's been there over 100 years and a great symbol of the city's maritime past. Portland Alley is what New York looks like in many TV shows and movies, since it's one of the top filming locations in the city. Well, you'll need to pay $2.90 to get here by SkyTram, but once you're on Roosevelt Island, it's free to explore this 2-mile strip of land with a lot of historical sites and epic views of the skyline. This is one of my favorite viewpoints in all of NYC. The Brooklynites Promenade is just a 15-minute walk uphill from the tourist mecca of Dumbo, and so much more local. This art installation was built on the 34th Street NR platform, and you can reach your hand up and have a light flash and music play as you compose your own music underground. In the basement of the New Yorker Hotel, check out the Nikola Tesla exhibit, open to the public. The inventor spent the last 10 years of his life living in the hotel, and you can see photos and artifacts dedicated to the quirky futurist. If you're like me and you hate shopping for clothes, at least you can ride the old wooden escalators at Macy's. These are 100 years old and some of the last remaining ones in the world. The New York City subway system transits 4 million riders a day, and while it's not the world's easiest, my goal today is to break it down for first-timers so you avoid all the mistakes I've made in the past. Let's go. This is probably my most requested video ever because so many tourists are intimidated by the subway, but you shouldn't be. And at the end of this, I'm going to take you through a sample ride, so pay close attention. Simply put, a single ride on the New York City subway costs $2.75. The MTA recently made a proposal to raise the subway cost to $2.90 a ride after Labor Day. Not official yet, but it would be the first fare increase in 4 years. Currently, a 7-day pass, $33, and a 30-day pass, $127. A big area that has given my viewers a lot of confusion is OmniPay. We are just gonna break this down entirely. So for most of my viewers watching, if you have a credit card with contactless payment or a credit card saved to a wallet on your Android or iOS device, you can use OmniPay. You just tap and go. You don't need any special app downloaded for this. The only time you would be required to have a Metro card anymore would be if you're taking the air train at JFK Airport. You would have to pay $8.25 plus a $1 fee for buying said Metro card. And essentially, you've just bought a $9.25 souvenir as far as I'm concerned, because you really don't need this. Now, I've heard that they may have contactless payment enabled at the air train in the near future, so by the time you watch this video, if it's in a few years, you might not even need that Metro card, period. Now, if you are traveling with a family or a small group, pay attention to this, because I get a lot of questions about how many swipes you can get with one card or how many taps you can get with one Omni device or credit card, and the answer is 3 extra. You can swipe once and then get 3 extra people on 3 different swipes before the card isn't available to be used anymore. So if you have more than 4 people, you either need 2 Metro cards or 2 different ways to pay with Omni Tap. If you have small children, kids 44 inches or under ride for free. In fact, I didn't even realize this till I researched this video. I once saw a mom encourage her little daughter to run under the turnstile, and I thought, what are they teaching these kids today? And now I realize because she's free. Let's talk unlimited cards and if you should get a 7-day unlimited pass. Now, this is kind of a tricky topic. Omni offers a 7-day unlimited pass through their contactless payment. It's called fare capping. You can only do it on 1 device or card. Now, if you tap 12 times with any Omni payment, you automatically get the rest of the rides for the week free, which sounds pretty straightforward, but this only works from Monday at 12 a.m. to Sunday at 11:59 p.m., which means if you're a tourist tourist and you're arriving on a Thursday and you're gonna be using the subway like crazy and you want the unlimited, Omni's probably not gonna make sense for you. So the bottom line is, unless your trip fully lines up with a Monday to a Sunday, if you need to go unlimited, buy separate cards for each member of your group. And special shout out to one of my viewers, Mark Finley, for pointing out how Omni Unlimited really isn't that great for tourists. Probably the best piece of advice I can give you on this video is to have Google Maps downloaded on your phone. Having a smartphone in general in this city is gonna make transportation 99% easier. Google Maps will tell you exactly what exit to take when you get to a new station. And something in the past that I've recommended is City Mapper. I don't use City Mapper as much anymore because I now live at a local station, and City Mapper doesn't tell me on weekends when subways are skipping my stop, and that's somewhere where Google Maps is a lot stronger. So honestly, between the two, I use Google Maps a lot more now, and you have to have that on your phone. It's just gonna save you so much hassle here. Whenever you're looking for a specific subway station, make sure that it is the exact one that you need. And I can't illustrate this point any better. We were filming this video and we had a lost tourist approach us, and he thought that he was at the Spring Street 6 station. He was actually at the Spring Street CE station. So you have to not only know the name of your station, but what line you're taking. And don't get me started on the 4 23rd Street stations or the 3 different Canal Street options. Same thing if you're meeting somebody, if you're meeting a friend at any station, don't say I'm meeting at Canal, say I'm meeting at the 6 train at Canal. Maybe give the corner as well.
I'd like to thank the partner of today's video, Soundcore by Anchor, because when you're riding the New York City subway, sometimes you just want to drown out the noise. I've got the brand new Soundcore Liberty 4 NCs right here, and they look so sleek. But I'm all about performance, and no matter how loud it gets underground, their industry-leading noise-canceling system is going to have you enjoying your music or podcasts in peace. They reduce noise by up to 98.5%, which is a lifesaver after a long day exploring the city. Some stations are louder than others, and with a new adaptive active noise cancellation 2.0, they tailor to your ear canal and environment through real-time calculations, leveling up your journey. And the sound is studio quality. It's like switching on HD for your ears. If you're like me, you probably hate always charging devices, and their worry-free battery is so nice. Get 10 hours of playtime on a single charge and 50 hours of playtime with a charging case. Shrink the noise wherever you go with Soundcore Liberty 4 NC. See the link in the description to purchase your own pair.
Now, if you're new to New York City, you have to realize that we have local and express trains. Local go to every single station, where express is gonna skip the local stops and go a little bit more quickly to some of the bigger stations. And some of the most common express stops you'll see all over the city: 59th, 42nd, 34th, and 14th Streets. Here's a little tip for you. If you see people running down the stairs, they probably see that the subway just arrived. So if you're in a rush, you might want to run too. For my tourists watching or spending most of their trip in Manhattan, when you look at the subway signs here, you're generally gonna see either uptown, meaning heading for Harlem, downtown, heading for Financial District, and then you'll see another destination of Queens. But you really have to pay attention to the uptown and the downtown when you're looking at this. Every single station in the city has a board that tells you the timetables, and they are very accurate. So when I first moved to New York, this was not a thing at every station. Had to check by phone. Don't even need your phone to know when your train is coming and which side it's coming on as well. Let's discuss entering and exiting stations, and this could be a little bit tricky if you're not overwhelmed already. One thing to look for is many smaller stations have these globes here. That's how you know a subway entrance is there. Some huge stations you can just tell by the exterior, but any of the smaller ones, this is your clue from far away. Now this is where sometimes even New Yorkers will mess up if they race into a station without checking. If the sign for the subway only says uptown, it's usually a smaller local station, you'll see this. You can only enter in one direction, meaning if you enter in the downtown spot and you want to go uptown, you have a few options. 1, cut your losses, exit, cross the street, swipe again. 2, take the subway one stop and hope that the next station has an underpass or a way to connect going the opposite direction. 3, you can ask the station attendant nicely to let you go. There's one other thing you could see. It might say downtown, uptown, and underpass, meaning you can go to the downtown side and there's gonna be a staircase leading to the uptown side. Now in this example here, when it doesn't say downtown, uptown, or underpass, it means that you can go both uptown and downtown from this 57th Street station. Another tip for you is that these subway stations are super, super hot in the summer. So if you don't have to spend that much time down here, the timetables on Google Maps are very accurate. So maybe at about the 5-minute mark, I would consider heading in, because I have had some awful experiences. Heat of the summer, humidity, save time, stay above ground as long as possible. Let's talk transferring within stations. Now in almost every instance, transferring is free inside of a station. This is not like Tokyo where you have to swipe again and pay twice. You can transfer multiple times within the subway system and not have to pay more than $2.75. We're gonna talk some safety tips right now, and the zebra board, also known as the indication board behind me, is a big one. Let's say you're riding the subway by yourself late at night. You wanna make sure you're sitting in the same car as the conductor. Find this indication board. That is where the conductor will be, because they always point at it when they stop at a station. An added bonus with this, you know where the conductor is if you have questions like, is this train going to a certain spot? Very useful. When the train comes, don't stand in front of the door for your own safety, because you're gonna get some angry New Yorkers cursing at you for blocking their path. Stand back, let them go, and then board the subway. When you're riding on any subway car, don't make eye contact with strangers. Like the New York City subway, it's not the friendliest place. Just mind your own business and you should be okay. If you do witness erratic behavior, you'll see a lot of other New Yorkers doing this. At the next station, exit and go to another subway car. I've even had to do this a handful of times in my 12 years living in the city. Here's one you learn the hard way. If you ever board a subway car and it's completely empty, there's probably a reason for it. You'll find out why. I literally saw somebody doing this today on my way to this shoot. Don't stop in the middle of a busy path like this to check your subway directions. Now, luckily no one's behind me right now, but this lady actually caused a little bit of a traffic jam as everybody had to swerve around her. For your own safety, to try not to get run over or cursed at, don't do that. I get a lot of questions about accessibility in New York City. I hate to say it, but the New York City subway needs a lot of work when it comes to being handicap accessible. So for example, in Manhattan, only 36 of 147 stations are wheelchair accessible. And when it comes to elevators, most major stations have them, but they smell, well, I can't think of the right word. Use your imagination. They smell terrible. And now we're gonna put all this knowledge to the test. We're gonna do a sample ride from here in Greenwich Village, uptown to Carnegie Diner and Cafe. Follow along. I always would recommend picking the route that does not have any transfers, especially if you're new here. We're gonna take the F train. We found the right entrance, West 4th, Washington Square, looking for the F train. We're not looking for the orange line, we're just looking for the F to make sure that letter is here. It is here, and we're gonna go down. We got two choices here, Uptown, Queens, F. So we're gonna go this way. The other side says downtown. We're not going downtown. And don't get confused by this downtown Brooklyn ACE stuff. That's to go to the other side. Stick to your letters. Always follow the signs with your letter. Another reminder, Uptown, F train, here. And just in case you missed it the last 3 times, F train, this direction, FM, BD on the left, that's express. We're looking for the local train. This train just passed, F and the M. This is the M train. We don't want this one. Don't just hop onto the first train you see. Make sure it's the one you actually trying to take. We have another Uptown Express train on the other track, also not taking that. Remember, we are not looking for the color, we are looking for the exact letter here, F. Now this is telling me the next train is now 12:57, and we look up at the board, it's confirming it. Remember what I said? All the subway stations now have boards that tell you pretty accurate timetables. You look up, it points in the direction of the F train. This side, arriving now. F train's here. Let the people exit. They always announce the next stop. They just said it's 14th Street, so we know that it's heading uptown. You can also check up there to make sure you're going in the right direction by the different stops listed. We made it to 57th Street. Now we have to find the right exit. We're looking for 6th Ave and 57th. Most of the time, if you exit at the wrong place, it's not a big deal. You're still gonna be pretty close to where you have to be, but just save yourself the trouble. And there it is, across the street.
The worst fear of any traveler is spending an entire trip surrounded by swarms of other tourists, feeling like you're having the same trip as everybody else. Today I'll be sharing some New York neighborhoods that are gonna give you more local vibes and still have a ton of things to do. Use this guide to make your next trip here feel a little bit more authentic. Here we go. This first neighborhood is so close to the belly of the beast that is Times Square, and yet just far enough away where you won't be hounded by Disney characters, and it's Hell's Kitchen. Just a 10-minute walk from Times Square, I think the best reason to visit here is 9th Ave, which is one of the most underrated areas in the city to find good food. They have diverse offerings like Peruvian, Spanish, Venezuelan, so much more, and heck, they're even home to one of my favorite bars, Rudy's, where you can get a free hot dog with every beer. But I really love it because you can just walk around some of the blocks and find a little bit more of a relaxed vibe and even some brownstones that would give you Brooklyn vibes. Sometimes the best neighborhoods for savvy travelers are just outside of those crowded central areas. And you'll find more New York local options with fewer chains, no Olive Gardens, and much better prices. I also recommend searching this area for a pre or post Broadway meal. And if you haven't visited Schmackery's Cookies yet, you better hit them up. One of the best cookies I've ever tried living in New York. And just a note for everybody watching, I will have links in the description to every single neighborhood mentioned if you want a more in-depth guide to them. I have yet to visit a single neighborhood anywhere on the planet that can match this one for affordability and diversity of food choices, and that's Jackson Heights, Queens, just 30 minutes from Midtown Manhattan on the 7 train, but it's like stamping your passport. You can sample anything from Paraguayan sandwiches to Tibetan momos, the only Bhutanese food truck in New York, and the best Mexican food you may just find on the East Coast of the US. Jackson Heights is a foodie's paradise, and it's just starting to get attention from tourists. If you're a little hesitant about exploring without a local, my good friend Greg, who's a mainstay on the channel, offers food tours there, and many of my viewers have told me it was the highlight of their trip. I don't think you can really say you've been in New York unless you hit up some of these amazing immigrant-owned businesses for food. The Upper West Side. Now this is a neighborhood that many of you may find yourselves in without really realizing it. It's home to the American Museum of Natural History and Central Park. But if you walk just a few blocks away, you've got a great neighborhood that was even home to the fictional characters from Seinfeld. There's so many iconic places to eat there, like Gray's Papaya, probably the most legendary hot dog shop in New York City, or Barney Greengrass, an old school Jewish deli that doesn't get anywhere near the attention it deserves. Anthony Bourdain was even a huge fan. Even just wandering the beautiful streets after visiting Central Park is worth it. And if you want to see a local park that gets way less attention than Central, head over to Riverside Park. One of the city's best bagels, as far as I'm concerned, is located near Columbia Absolute Bagels. And you are absolutely missing out if you don't visit the Upper West Side, which is truly one of the crown jewel neighborhoods of the city, as far as I'm concerned. While most tourists cross the Brooklyn Bridge and stay in a small area of Dumbo, I encourage you to walk up the hill 10 minutes to Brooklyn Heights. For one, you've got million-dollar views of Manhattan from the Brooklyn Bridge Promenade, which I think is one of Brooklyn's best kept secret viewpoints. Seriously, I could just sit there for hours. Speaking of million-dollar views, you've got multi-million-dollar brownstones galore, and I call this the most beautiful neighborhood in all of New York City. And while it's not really known as a foodie destination, there's enough interesting spots like Della Rocco's for you to spend some time there. If you want a little taste of brownstone Brooklyn, Brooklyn Heights is by far the best spot for a tourist to check out. Make sure to bring your camera. Many of my Chinese American friends tell me that the Chinatown in Flushing, Queens is the superior one. And while you can't knock Chinatown Manhattan's central location, if you're willing to trek out to Flushing, you'll be eating in an area that probably has the best Asian eats in the whole city. Chinese, Taiwanese, Korean, and more. It's also more local. I have visited eateries that don't even have English on the menu. So if you're in the mood for a food adventure, I highly recommend it. And check out our entire Chinatown series linked down in the description for even more specific picks of restaurants there. Few neighborhoods have the history and culture of Harlem in Upper Manhattan. I can't think of many places with better soul food in the city. If it's your first time in New York, definitely consider a walking tour. Free Tours by Foot has a great one that I've even taken years ago. I think Harlem gets a lot of attention internationally, but it's overlooked by many locals. From beautiful brownstones on Strivers Row to lots of food options, it's a must visit. And if you're into jazz music, Harlem has some very famous spots that play well into the night. Another really popular activity is seeing a gospel choir live. This is a neighborhood any tourist needs to have on their radar. A lot of my younger viewers will flock to Williamsburg for its trendy nightlife and hipster scene, but I think Greenpoint, which is located just north, is equally as interesting. They've got Peter Pan Donuts, which may be the best donut I've ever tried in the city, and the waterfront views are nothing to sleep on. But perhaps my favorite thing about Greenpoint is the large contingent of Polish restaurants. I have never had a pierogi as good as the one that I ate at Pirozik. And Greenpoint has multiple Polish restaurants for you to check out. You could spend an entire day doing it. It's also got a lot of nightlife, and if you're looking for an alternative to all the crowds in Williamsburg, Greenpoint really checks off all the boxes as far as I'm concerned. We're gonna cheat a little bit with this one because even though it feels like it's in New York, Hoboken is actually right across the Hudson River in New Jersey. Just a 10-minute path ride from Greenwich Village. It's worth it alone for those jaw-dropping views of the Manhattan skyline. But it's also worth exploring Frank Sinatra's hometown a little further. There's plenty of good dining and delis to choose from, and the little streets without the crowds of Manhattan make Hoboken feel a little bit like a tucked away oasis. Take it from somebody that grew up in Jersey, Hoboken is worth the trip. While Coney Island gets most of the tourist attention in South Brooklyn, I'm a much bigger fan of Brighton Beach, also known as Little Odessa. It's an interesting mix of immigrants from the former Soviet Union and the many local businesses they've established. If you're looking for pierogies and borscht, you've come to the right spot. How many neighborhoods of New York will you find random babushkas selling trinkets in the street? The boardwalk is also really neat to explore, to see live musicians, or just enjoy the ocean breeze off the Atlantic. And while I wouldn't call it a great beach for swimming, Brighton Beach packs a serious punch for the tourist who really wants to get to feel the cultural diversity that is New York. Make sure to stay tuned till the end. I'm gonna throw in one bonus neighborhood. Bushwick is one of New York's most unique neighborhoods to visit as a tourist. Its collection of graffiti in the Bushwick Collective and the surrounding blocks will give you a little taste of some local art. I also love all the vintage stores and thrift shops. My wife Adriana and I have gone shopping there in the past, just looking for some cool finds. It's also a real hub for nightlife. If you want to avoid the pretentious clubs in Manhattan, House of Yes, for example, is an incredible venue for any out-of-towner to check out. Or if you're looking for something more low-key, there's plenty of hip dive bars and a ton of spots to get some good craft beer. For my viewers under 30 or those just young at heart, Bushwick has so much to offer. One bonus for you all, Long Island City, Queens. If you get a chance to visit Long Island City, not to be confused with Long Island, the waterfront at Gantry Plaza is one of my favorites in the entire city. With unobstructed views of Manhattan and it's 75% less crowded than Dumbo, it's a fun way to spend an hour or two. And the neighborhood has some serious good eats if you know where to look. It's Queens' most expensive neighborhood for a reason, and just a few minutes away from Manhattan.
The first impression many tourists get of New York is right here at the airport, and unfortunately, it's It's not always a pleasant one. Today, I'll share how to avoid getting ripped off and scammed minutes after you arrive, and then the best and cheapest ways to get from JFK to Midtown Manhattan, and a few other common airport mistakes you want to avoid that'll have you feeling like a local. Here we go. We're gonna start with 2 potential scams that tourists need to be aware of the second they get out of arrivals, and one of these is so sneaky that even some of my more experienced travelers could fall for it. You've seen it in the movies, hailing a taxi from the airport and riding into the city in style, but that's where you have to be careful. Here's how it works. You'll walk out here and somebody will approach you offering you a taxi ride. They might say taxi or Midtown. And they may even tell you you'll get a better price than anywhere else, but never accept these rides. Or this could happen. This British couple was scammed $470. A man stood in the airport entrance, offered them a cab to their hotel, and Craig assumed it would go to the meter and cost 50 bucks. The pair later realized they should have been suspicious when he led them away to a private car park, away from the taxi rank and into a minibus driven by a second man. He asked them for the $20 for the parking fee, which they presumed would be taken off the bill, and told them they'd sort the fare when we get there. He started explaining to us that there were new toll fees for going between boroughs and over bridges. He then told me to take me to Manhattan. It was going to be $900. Now, I know what you're all thinking. If this happened to me, I would just get out of the car as soon as he told me that bad price. But keep this in mind, if your luggage is in the back, you're practically a hostage. This guy had an expensive engagement ring in his suitcase, and he really had no choice but to negotiate with the rogue driver. Now, if you do end up taking one of these unmarked taxis, best case scenario, you'll probably get a little bit ripped off. Worst case scenario, you'll pay a fortune or worse. And keep this in mind, even if you think you're getting a better deal, these cars are not insured. If anything goes wrong, you have nobody that you can complain to. Oh, welcome.
We're here for 5 days. I've watched everything.
We're actually making a video right now about arriving to the airport. If you don't mind, you feel free to be in the video.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Imagine that you arrive in New York and the first person you see is me. An even sneakier scam is somebody will be holding up an iPad or a sign that says Uber. Now, maybe you're coming from overseas and you think in the US that Ubers are just waiting for you without calling them. These are not Ubers. They're also unlicensed cars. It's the same situation. You're gonna be going into a livery cab. They're gonna charge you whatever they want, and you have no insurance, no way to fight anything. So also avoid those. I have seen those fake Ubers as recently as this year at LaGuardia. What are the legitimate ways to get a car into Manhattan? And the first and the most obvious is taking a yellow taxi. Now, if you're like my parents, you don't like messing with a smartphone, this is by far the easiest and simplest way to get into Midtown or anywhere else in New York. You just find the taxi sign right there. They will assign you a number and you just find the lane. There was like 10 people waiting. Actually, I don't think you would have waited very long at all for a taxi had you have taken this lane. Guy's really asking for a taxi right there. You see that? The guy behind me is literally trying to get people to not take the taxi line and just go. It still happens. As of late 2023, the flat fare is $70 or $75 if it's between 4 to 8 p.m. during weekdays and excluding holidays. Then we have tolls up to $6.94, a $2.50 congestion surcharge for trips that end in Manhattan south of 96th Street, which is likely where you'll be staying. So you're looking at about $95 to $100, including a $12 to $15 tip. This is not an inexpensive method to get into the city, but I do recommend it highly for groups or for people that are just not comfortable navigating public transit. By the way, if you have an issue with your driver, the good news is that you can contact something called 311. You can report unsafe driving or any other issue you run into. Just make sure you have your driver's name or identifying number from the taxi if you do run into any problems. And one more thing, all New York City taxis must have a working credit card reader. Ride shares. Now, this is my personal preferred method. When I'm at JFK Airport, normally I'm traveling with my wife and my son. I don't want to deal with public transit. And why I love ride shares at this airport is you have 3 different options that you can shop with and see what the best deal is. Important note, any terminal at JFK or any area airport is going to have signs for either ride rideshare pickup, Uber, Lyft pickup, whatever it may be, just follow the signs outside. I'm gonna use all 3 rideshare apps, and I'm gonna check which one has the best price, the Marriott Marquis in Midtown. JFK Terminal 4. All right, we're gonna start with Uber. We have got a price of $89.93, which a little bit more than a taxi would be, and you would wait 1 minute, so you wouldn't have to deal with a taxi line. Next up, Lyft. Price would be, cheapest would be $91.95, so $2 more. And my personal favorite is Revel, where you ride completely electric cars. Use this code for 40% off your first 2 rides. $88.47. Although I will admit Revel does have the longest wait of 17 minutes. That's the issue with Revels, is they do tend to take a little bit longer than a Lyft or an Uber. Something else to keep in mind about ride shares is you are expected to tip 15 to 20%, depending on the experience that you had. So factor that in. Those costs though do include tolls. In this scenario, at this time of day, I believe a taxi would have saved you maybe $2 or $3. So they were all almost the same. Now, when you call your ride share, you just have to cross the street, at least at Terminal 4, they're pretty similar, and find on your phone what letter and number corresponds to your driver. So if you got an Uber, it might say B1 or B2, and that's where your driver's gonna meet you. Just follow the signs. They make it really easy here. When you're arriving to New York City, make sure you have the exact address, east side or west side if you're in Manhattan. I'm gonna show you why. If you just put 109 42nd Street onto Uber, you would get the following choices. The first option is in Union City, New Jersey. So if you just tap that, you're heading to Jersey and you're probably spending $150. 109 East 42nd Street's by Bryant Park, and 109 West 42nd is a completely different address. So look very carefully at your address, and if it says New York, New York, that's Manhattan. If it says Brooklyn, New York, that is not Manhattan. Look how much that would cost you from here. $140. One other trick to keep in mind if you have some patience and the prices are surging on all of the apps, if you wait 10 or 15 minutes, it could change. Of course, in that case, you might just be better off waiting in the taxi line so you can see how long the taxi line is. If it's not long, a lot of times that is a better play. Before we get to the lower cost options to get to Manhattan, I want to throw one more out there that I think is just not worth it, and that is the shared shuttle service. It's about $50, and how it works is they pack as many passengers as possible into a van and they just drive you all over Manhattan, dropping people off. Now, depending how lucky you are, it might be the same speed as a taxi or an Uber. If you're unlucky, you might be sitting in gridlock traffic as the shuttle goes from hotel to hotel, and if your hotel's last, it could take you 2 hours with traffic to get there. So I think in this case, the middle ground is not worth it. I'd either go expensive or cheap. By the way, for those who haven't been here since 2020, the New York City Airporter bus no longer operates. It was $19 into the city, not a thing anymore. If you are on an absolute budget, I'm gonna show you how to get to Midtown Manhattan using public transit. Now, something to keep in mind about both of these options is it's extra work. If you're flying in overnight, if it's your first time in the city, if you have a big group, I recommend a taxi or a ride share. But if you really want to save money, these two options are interesting. So the first step is to find signs for the air train in any terminal. And something to keep in mind here is that for the air train, you pay at the end. You do not pay for your ticket before boarding. It's free to ride around the terminals. That's how people transfer. All right, so a lot of flights have just arrived. We're following the signs here. Transit to the city. It's going to arrive on both sides. We're going to Jamaica Station. Next one's in 5 minutes. Hear what she said? Let the other passengers off first before you get on. That's subway courtesy as well. Remember what I said, if you have an overnight flight, you just don't want to deal with stressful situations? This can be a little stressful. The first thing to keep in mind when you get off the air train is you cannot use contactless payment. You have to have a Metro card or a special AirTrain card, which you normally get from the machine the second you get out.
Because the fee has been waived.
So this is interesting. I've heard stories about this. They waived the AirTrain fee. It's free today, maybe because there's too many people.
Please proceed down to level 1. You can walk.
Well, they must have known I was coming. What's this? Guys, I'm sorry. The air train just went from free to back to $8.25 5 minutes later. I have no idea why. I learn something new every day. You could just get lucky and not pay. Unless it's your lucky day, like it just was for us, and they suddenly waive air train fees, you need to go to one of the machines and pay $8.25 to purchase an air train pass, plus an extra $1 for the new card. Now, I would just buy a Metro card with it, which would be $9.25. Then you have two choices, one of which is the cheaper one to take the New York City subway for $2.75. Now, you could add $2.75 to your card there, pay $12 and be ready with one swipe, or watch my New York City subway survival guide video so you know how to use Omni contactless payment on your phone. I recommend that so much more than having to spend extra money to put more on the Metro card. Just tap and go for the subway. I'm gonna show you how to take the subway and why I honestly don't like it very much. Let's go. All right, so we are following the crowd, following signs for the subway. We're looking for the E train. So while you are getting the best price, you are also walking a lot more. Now, because the air train fee was waived, this would be the only option to buy a Metro card. And look at this line here. So hopefully you have contactless payment enabled on your phone. You can skip this line. All right, let's find the E train heading for Manhattan. I'm gonna recommend if you take the subway, go as far down as you can, away from the crowds. You'll get a better chance at a seat. The only advantage I see to the E-train is if your hotel is located close to one of the stops, it actually could be kind of useful. But if you're staying anywhere in Midtown, I just don't think this is the best option. Let me show you what to do when the train comes. It takes about 50 minutes to get to Midtown. As I said, go towards the end and you'll probably get a seat. If you're fast, instead of taking the subway, I prefer taking the Long Island Railroad, also known as the LIRR. So either if the air train happens to be free, you leave, or you pay $8.25 plus the extra $1, $9.25 to exit off the machine. Now you can either buy a Long Island Railroad ticket from another machine, just a little bit down the corridor, or my pick, go to the MTA Train Time app and you would select Jamaica as the origin, and then either Grand Central or Penn Station as the destination. And there's one right now, there's one in 8 minutes. These are running constantly to 34th Street Penn Station. And you could buy a city ticket off peak for $5. That's it, $5 is what you would have to spend. That's $2.25 more to get to Manhattan in double the speed and to be in more comfort, as I'm about to show you. If your train is between 6 and 8 in the morning on the LIRR heading to Manhattan, or 4 to 8 p.m. on the way back to JFK, you can buy what's called a peak city ticket, which is only $2 more at $7. So again, the total cost would be $14.25 in most situations to get to 34th Street, Penn Station, or 42nd Street, Grand Central. You've got two choices. We're doing a video about how to get from the airport to the city.
Okay, so you're gonna go under all other tickets, city tickets, off peak, and you're going to make it a pen.
Want to go? $5. Thank you. So the trick is, if you want to get, thank you for helping us, if you want to get a city ticket, you have to go all other tickets to get the discounted price. Friendly staff here too. Got on our phone that it's track 2, easy to find. No escalator, unfortunately. That kind of sucks. If you have a ton of luggage, I don't recommend the subway or the LIRR. If you have a reasonable amount of luggage, LIRR is fine. But you may find yourself taking some steps like this. And if you're unsure, you just look up. It says Penn Station, 3 minutes. It is so clear. I'm telling you, for $2.25, you're getting like $10 of a better experience. Very important, before boarding, make sure to activate your ticket, okay? I have to show you all a common mistake I see with the LIRR. I've had viewers, I believe, they get on this and they just go right to the ends. And look, this barely could even fit my small suitcase. In order to find the biggest luggage rack, you have to go to the middle areas of the train. This would fit a suitcase, I think almost double this size. Also, for that extra $225, look how much more space you get here. Oh, just cleaner, nicer. And this goes directly to Penn Station. Now, you're still gonna have to walk or possibly take another subway depending where your destination is in the city, so factor that in. A topic that I have been asked so many times that I've never actually addressed in a video is about SIM cards when you arrive to New York. Now, you do have the option to buy it at JFK, but I'm gonna tell you why I don't recommend that. Now, in the past, they did have SIM card machines. There's one here at Terminal 4, but it's not even operating. So your only option is to go to a kiosk, and I checked myself. I was just curious, what's the cheapest 7-day pass you have?
The cheapest is $45. You get 4 GB internet, unlimited phone, unlimited.
Okay, thank you. The cheapest 7-day SIM card was $45, which I think is too expensive. So your best bet is, one, check with your local carrier to see if they offer some kind of an international package. That might just be the easiest for you. You don't have to deal with SIM cards, going to a store. The other would be going on Amazon or any other retailer online before you leave. You can order US SIM cards in advance off of Amazon. And if you can't do any of those, I recommend going to the T-Mobile store, which is right across the street from Macy's by Herald Square in Midtown Manhattan. $15 to $30 is the range that I've been told. Do some research on that, but I definitely don't recommend buying it right away at JFK Airport because they do have pretty good Wi-Fi available. In fact, let me check if it works for me. Free JFK Wi-Fi, free unlimited Wi-Fi. You are now online. The free Wi-Fi, it's working. So if you're concerned about calling an Uber, I think you should be able to get service across this. Should we check? Let's check. If you do call an Uber and you're using the JFK Wi-Fi, I tested it. I lost it like right across the street. So I think you could hang out by the terminal and you could probably see your car more or less when it's about to pull up and then go. I think you could survive just on the terminal Wi-Fi. These smart carts are $6 to rent and you purchase them inside. Now, sometimes if you get lucky, somebody might just leave one out here and you might be able to use it for free. Not guaranteed to happen, so if you have a lot of luggage, this can actually be quite useful. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to Union City, New Jersey. Going up Broadway is an iconic New York experience, but there's so much that can go wrong. Today we'll be sharing the biggest Broadway mistakes to avoid, from getting frustrated overpaying for tickets, the agony of choosing the wrong show, and a sneaky scam that even experienced theater goers regret falling for. You don't want to miss this, trust me. And joining me for this special video, Billy Hipkins, a Broadway lifer.
I'm a lifer. I was in a Broadway show a long time ago. I've been working in wardrobe on Broadway for 25 years. I've worked on 32 different productions in the wardrobe department. Currently right here at the Winter Garden Theater doing Back to the Future, where I'm dressing the stars, Doc and Marty.
Billy, we are standing right in front of the doors to the theater, and I think a big fear of first-timers especially is choosing the wrong seats for a show.
Well, I would say there's a difference between seats for a musical and seats for a straight play. Now, say if you're coming to Broadway to see Sandra Bullock in a play, sit down front. You want to get a good look at a celebrity, sit close. The thing is, though, most stages are a little higher than your eye level, so you're going to be sitting looking up. If you're very close, you're going to see a lot of shoes. For musicals, I always like to say sit in the front of the mezzanine. Because we dance, we have patterns on the floor, so you get a better overview, and the lighting, the way it plays off the set and the floor and stuff, you're better off upstairs. The other thing I'd say is, the further to the side you are, and every theater has a seating chart. If you're on this side, you might miss what's happening up in the corner over there. You might be looking into the wings a little bit on that side. So center is always better. Further back can be a good thing on a lot of shows. Here's the other thing I'll tell you in front rows. If you can see the cast can see you. They see everything everybody does in that auditorium. So if you're gonna sit up front, you better be wide awake and attentive, because trust me, they're gonna talk about you when they walk off stage.
Now, Billy, one thing a lot of people are afraid of, prices. Broadway can be expensive, but We've got some methods for you to save money, and the first one are rush tickets, which in the past involved going to the theater the day of the show in the morning, getting in line for unsold seats. Now, some select theaters still do this, but many now have digital lotteries. And the day before the show, you enter your name on an app. In this link right here, every single show on Broadway and their rush policies are listed. So for example, Back to the Future where Billy works, you can get $40 rush tickets at the box office day of the show, or $45 if you're lazy and want to do a digital rush.
I will tell you, most of the rush tickets are the first couple rows, so again, you're going to be looking up.
Another thing to look out for with rush tickets is typically the limit is only 2, and sometimes they even separate you from the other person.
There's also cancellation. I mean, every day there will be a line forming as soon as the box office opens, and as tickets are canceled by people rescheduled, they'll resell at full price, but they will sell some of our better seats day of. There are ways to do that if you feel like standing at the box office at any given show. On a big hit show with hot tickets, if the box office is going to open at 10, by 9, stand outside.
Something else to look out for with rush tickets is they also could be obstructed or limited view. You're basically at the mercy of the house. You could get lucky, you might not get the best seats, but you're gonna get a good price. That's the important thing.
Now they will tell you if they're obstructed view, they'll let you know that. Now here's the thing. Obstructed usually means there's a column that's going to be in your view. They'll tell you that. But in a lot of the theaters, where if you're toward the back of the orchestra, the mezzanine is over your head. You have a view of the stage, but you might miss the top of the set. So on shows where action happens way up there, further back you are, you may be obstructed in that way that you're under the overhang of the mezzanine. That is something to ask the box office. Is any of this blocking the top of the proscenium?
The other way to get cheap tickets, and you'll see this walking through Times Square, is the TKTS booth. Going there in the morning, day of a show. They will tell you what shows they have available on their website, but you do have to line up. Could take an hour, but there are deals to be had there.
My other favorite for cheapy seats, Today Tix. Get the app, Today Tix, T-I-X, run by the Theater Development Fund. You can kind of look in advance. Now on that also, you won't be able to pick where you're sitting, but you can definitely get some decent seats at a decent price.
Now, unfortunately, something that is all too common, rip-off tickets on Broadway. Many people just don't know better. And the first thing I will say is I'd be careful about buying tickets from scalpers right outside the venue. You don't know if those seats are counterfeit or not. You don't know if that person's gonna go run away as soon as you buy the tickets. Another one that I'm hearing about lately is people who are waiting for tickets at the TKTS line. You're gonna be approached by somebody with a clipboard, and they're gonna tell you that they have better tickets if you just talk to one of their associates, and you're really just talking to a ticket scalper who's probably gonna charge you more than you would pay at the TKTS booth. And I've been reading all about this lately from you guys. And the number one issue I see my viewers running into and getting mad about is going to a website like this. It'll have words like BroadwayTickets.com. It'll look like the official reseller, but when you actually go to the site, we have an example here, Aladdin on September 22nd, they have it starting at $104. What you always need to do instead of relying on a random Google search is go to the official box office site. We did just that, and Aladdin for the same night starts at $64.50, almost $40 cheaper. So I'm gonna repeat this, very important. Always start on the official site of the show, not some Broadway site that's gonna trick you to thinking they're the official reseller. Newbies to Broadway may be anxious about how to dress. What would you tell them?
I would tell them, we want everyone to feel welcome in a Broadway theater. You dress however you are comfortable. You are welcome here. The only thing I'm going to tell you though is we have a lot of air conditioning, so it might get cold, so you might want to consider having a jacket with you. But whatever you've got on, come on in. You're welcome here. Used to be people dressed up a lot on a Saturday night to see a show. Those days are over. Come be comfortable, come enjoy yourself. You are welcome here, whatever you got.
All right, Billy, another common issue, people arriving late. There's traffic, the subway breaks down. What do you do if you arrive late? And what time would you tell people they should arrive?
I'd say if you're picking up tickets at the box office, give yourself a half hour before the curtain so you feel comfortable. Get your tickets, you can come in, you can relax, you have time, stand outside if you want. There's gonna be a lot of people doing the same. Give yourself that time. If you've already got your tickets, give yourself 20 minutes, 15 minutes before the curtain to get in, get comfortable. If you want to use the restroom, feel free. As far as late seating, if you are late, well, we're not gonna start over, but they will seat you. Now, a lot of shows have very distinct At the end of this number, that is a moment where we'll seat late seaters. At the end of this scene, that's when we'll seat people. You can't just go in because it is disruptive. So we've got that all very mapped out. It happens all the time. People get up during the show if they need to use a restroom. You're not going to be forbidden to do so. Do your best if you get there early to take care of all that stuff so you can just sit back and enjoy the show till the intermission or till it's over if you don't have an intermission.
And Billy, what about people who forget to turn off their cell phone?
If you can hear it, we can hear it. Don't do it. Turn off your cell phone. And while we're at it, don't think you could sneak pictures of the show or take videos. We see you. They see you. They will report it to an usher immediately and you will be ejected from the building. Don't do it. As far as singing along, don't do that. You paid good money to hear people that have been training their whole lives to do this job, not to hear each other. You're going to really annoy the people around you too.
It's not a Taylor Swift concert.
It is not a sing-along.
I think a mistake that a lot of first-timers make is thinking that all Broadway shows are actually on the street of Broadway. Now, we are standing in front of Broadway, Winter Garden Theater, right there. One of only 2 shows that are still on Broadway, literally on the street, Broadway Theater being the other, and it got the nickname Broadway because at the turn of the 20th century, every single Broadway theater was on this street. Now, it's all around the theater district. Now today, Broadway actually refers to theaters that can hold 500 or more people. An off-Broadway show is 99 to 499 seats, and off-Broadway are 99 seats or lower.
Example, Little Shop of Horrors. That is a small show. It belongs in an off-Broadway venue. It doesn't belong in a big Broadway house. There are shows that are just too big to put in an off-Broadway house. The scope of the show determines where it should sit. Your price point is lower off-Broadway, slightly, but some shows are appropriate for that venue as opposed to a bigger house. We just saw the Britney Spears Once Upon a One More Time in a monstrously big house, and they couldn't make it in a smaller house. They might have survived on Broadway. In an off-Broadway house, they might have run for years. It's impossible to say, but bigger house, more overhead.
All right, Billy, what about food and drink inside the theater? Can you bring your own food and drink? And if you don't, what can you expect price-wise inside?
You cannot bring your own food and drinks into the theater. Don't. People try to bring the rest of their pizza from John's with them. You can't bring it to your seat, folks. Eat before you get here or eat afterwards. Now, in the theater, yes, concessions. The owners of these theaters want to make money on beverages and cocktails and some snack, candy items. And it's going to be very, very expensive. But really, did you come here to eat and drink, or did you come here to see a show? I think you could go 2 hours without it. Now, there are shows where certain performers will not allow there to be ice in their drinks because they don't want to hear the clack, clack, clack of ice during the performance.
Billy, with so many options on Broadway, picking a show can be overwhelming. How do you tell a first-timer to narrow it down?
Well, now, again, it depends on what you want to see. If you've got a family, go see Lion King, go see Aladdin. We have plenty of really good family fare shows out there. If English is not your first language, something like Lion King is a very easy spectacle that you don't have to try to keep up with a plot. If you like movies, Back to the Future. It is a really great representation of the movie on the stage. If you're into something more challenging, go see a play. You might want to go see a drama. We have some wonderful moving theater that isn't musical fare, and a lot of long-standing things like Wicked, Book of Mormon. We have things that have tried and true and been around for years and years, and if you haven't seen them yet, well, there's a reason they're still here. People are loving them.
All right, putting you on the spot, what's your favorite all-time show? Can't say Back to the Future.
Favorite all-time show? Again, I'm going to say Little Shop of Horrors. That is a quality piece of theater. I love that show. I love when people get eaten by a plant.
All right, so a lot of people, they come to the city or they're visiting here and they don't just want to go to a Broadway show. They want to get a drink after, they want to get dinner after. Where are your top picks after all these years?
I do love going over by Schubert Alley on 45th Street to Junior's. Junior's is busy, it's big, but they've got great burgers. They have a brisket over potato pancakes to die, and they have killer cheesecake. I like going over to Junior's. Now, if you want to go someplace that maybe run into a Broadway performer that you just saw, I'd say Joe Allen's over on Restaurant Row on 46th Street. Joe Allen's is a place where Broadway folks will go after, and also upstairs from there is Bar Central, which is a nice place for a cocktail, where a lot of Broadway folks go hang out after a show, so you might just catch someone that you just saw on the stage.
2 of my favorites, one would be Adele's, which is halal food, just a few blocks actually from this theater right here. Now the line can get pretty long, but it's one of my favorite halal trucks in the entire city. And for food, I'm a big fan of a spot called Easy Paella and Tapas, actually in Hell's Kitchen, where you live. I think their paella and some of their Venezuelan fusion stuff is fantastic. Before or after a show.
And you can't go wrong at John's Pizza right across from the Majestic Theater on 44th Street. That is a quality pizza.
So Billy, actually right when we met you, there were a ton of autograph seekers waiting for the actors to come out. What is the respectful way to get a Broadway actor's autograph after a show?
Line up at our little barricades right there and have a pen ready with you, because you can't expect that they're going to have a marker. Have your playbill ready, have something you want them to sign ready. Don't ask them to sign pictures of themselves or merchandise that you plan to turn around and sell on eBay. They know that's what you want to do, so don't do it. They're not going to do it. Most folks will take a quick picture with you if they have a second. Not everyone does. At the end of the show, a lot of folks just need to get home. And not everyone always feels great at the end of the show, so you can't expect it. But most people will come out after and just have a quick moment with you. A lot of times, fans of the show will send us things backstage. They'll send things that they baked. We're not going to eat them. We can't say for sure who baked it and what's in it, so don't send food backstage. It's a lovely thing to do. We're going to end up throwing it out.
Billy, not only a Broadway veteran, but also a fellow YouTuber. Tell people about your channel.
That's right. I have my own personal channel. It's Billy Hipkins, the Also Ran, ALSORAN. I just talk on the daily most days about my New York life, either what's going on at my theater, what's going on at my apartment, what's going on with my 2 cats that drive me crazy and I love them to death. I just run my big mouth every day, and a lot of people seem to enjoy it, so tune in.
Americans are suffering from so-called tipflation.
They're feeling this change, and Americans are very divided over it.
Many say they are feeling the pinch from tipping fatigue.
How bad has tipping culture gotten in New York City? Today, we're gonna find out. Now to show you how crazy it's gotten, we are gonna buy some self-serve yogurt. The pressure to tip is real. You have the employee standing right in front of you. Even though I did all the work myself, it's still encouraged 15, 20% tip. And you feel a little bit cheap sometimes if you don't do it. According to Wikipedia, tipflation and tip creep are terms to describe the US's recent widespread expansion of gratuity to more industries, as opposed to being traditionally only prevalent in full-service restaurants. Tipflation's origins are likely the COVID-19 pandemic and the inflation surge which began in 2021. The social pressure created from such systems is often separately mentioned as guilt tipping, and tipflation has also been seen as causing tipping fatigue, which is the resentment that American consumers generally feel from tipping culture. I polled my international viewers about their opinion of tipping, and their answers, well, they were pretty strong. I find it absolutely insane that stores at Newark Airport have the audacity to ask for tips at checkout when I had to do everything, including scanning the items and checking out myself. If anything, I should tip myself. Been living in Japan for many years now, and among the reasons why I love this country is the fact that you don't need to tip to receive impeccable customer service. No matter what your background is, every customer is generally treated professionally with respect, decency, and hospitality. Personally, I find it rude to be expected to give a tip for service. It should not be my responsibility to pay staff just because their employer doesn't give them a decent wage. If I want to leave a tip, it should be my choice and the amount. A trip to the US gets very expensive if you're tipping every time you buy food or drink, which in turn makes me avoid these outlets. And we actually got a response from a local here. And he said, what happened to when in Rome? If visitors came to your country, would you not expect them to follow your cultural norms? Now, I have seen some hostility in comments going back and forth about the US culture behind tipping and supporting service workers and people coming from other countries who are just plain fed up. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, I appreciate it. I bumped into Omari, one of my viewers here, and I want his opinion as a New Yorker about tipping culture. What do you think?
Obviously, you know, a lot of servers and things like that get most of their payments off tips, so I don't mind tipping. The thing that I've been noticing with a lot more restaurants is gratuity being added, which kind of isn't fun, especially if you run into like not the best help, which is like a thing that's tend to be annoying. But obviously with everything going up, I want to pay people more, and good service definitely deserves a great tip.
What do you think about places where they put the terminal in front of you and there's like 15, 20% added just for, I don't know, like getting yogurt?
That's the thing that kind of kills me. Also, like, you know, sometimes like with a 5-minute Uber in the city, because you just want to avoid some traffic, it's like a $20 or $15 tip. That could be more than what you ordered.
Dude, thank you so much. I think it's time we broke down the origins of the tipping culture of the US. The word tip dates to the 17th century when London taverns and coffee houses would put signs saying to ensure promptitude alongside boxes or bowls where customers could leave an extra coin for faster service. Tipping was almost non-existent in the US before the Civil War, but wealthy Americans visiting Europe brought the practice to the US in the mid-1800s, unsurprisingly eager to mimic European customs, but it took root as a business strategy during Reconstruction. And this is so ironic today because many European visitors, European countries are completely opposite of the US tipping system. Some hospitality companies started to use freed slaves after the Civil War, paid them low wages, and encouraged customers to leave tips. Now this is fascinating because not everybody was for tipping even in the 19th century. According to an article that appeared in the Times in 1897, there was a movement brewing against tipping in America. The anti-tipping group believed that tipping was the vilest of imported vices because it created an aristocratic class in a country that fought hard to eliminate a class-driven society, and there were even 6 state legislators that attempted and failed to pass an anti-tipping bill that would make leaving gratuities unlawful. Even with all that backlash, by 1938, President Roosevelt signed the Fair Labor Standards Act, which established the first minimum wage of 25 cents per hour, but there was no minimum for tipped wages. In so doing, Congress codified the tipping practice, and it wouldn't be until 1966 before it would pass a minimum for tipped workers, which is about where we're at today in 2023, and we're gonna get to how New York City handles tipped employees a little later on. I always find coffee shops a little bit controversial on how much you should tip for my non-American viewers. Just want to get a small latte. Now you see, I have no problem with how that machine operated. It just gave you $1, $2, or $3 tip. I always tip $1 if they're making me a latte. I mean, I do think that being a barista is a skill, and I'll tip on it, but not everyone agrees. If you wanted to repeal tipping in the US, I think it would be a lot harder than you think due to social pressure. And there was an interesting study, according to Michael Lynn, professor of consumer behavior at Cornell, with a tip credit, employers can rely on tips to cover a decent portion of their labor costs, which allow them to bring down menu prices. For example, there's 2 establishments equal in quality of food and service. The only difference is one allows tipping and has lower menu prices, and the other has a higher menu price because they don't allow tipping. Consumers are more likely to dine out at the restaurant with a cheaper menu, even if they pay the same amount after leaving a tip. All right, let's talk about minimum wage for tipped employees in New York, like your average waiter. The minimum wage for food service workers in the city is $15 per hour. Their employers can satisfy the minimum wage by combining a cash wage of at least $10 with a tip allowance of no more than $5 per hour. So the normal minimum wage in New York is still $15 an hour, and I'm hoping that waiters and bartenders are making even more with tipping. Auto gratuities and extra credit card fees have been something that have annoyed a lot of New Yorkers, and I want to show you in action. And 1 large potato fries. Now there was a $4 service charge added, which is close to 15%. And they didn't even give you the option of tipping. It was thrown on there. This is interesting because there's no waiters here. It's just order and take it to eat. So you're seeing tipping popping up into spots that I don't think I saw it even a few years ago. Now that you saw New York's secret food tax in action, there's other places where you might run into it. Now, the New York Post had an article from September about wellness fees or kitchen staff appreciation fees. One restaurant was tacking on a 5% wellness charge added to all checks in support of health benefits for our staff, but it is not a fee for service. And it points out how in a high-end restaurant, the social pressure to not look cheap and say you don't want to pay the extra fee, very strong. Something I want my tourists to be very careful of is double tipping. Now, I saw this at a high-end rooftop bar recently where my cocktail was $20. They threw in an extra 20% auto gratuity and tax, so it came out to about $25, and they still gave me the option to tip 15 to 20% on top of that. So sometimes in the city, you have to be like a detective to look at your bill to figure out exactly where all these fees are coming from. What's actually considered proper tipping etiquette in New York? Well, Trip Savvy had a really useful guide. For taxis, 10 to 20% of your fare. Porters at a hotel, $2 per bag delivered to your room. Restaurants, 15 to 20% of total bill, although I personally agree with 20% on the pre-tax total, assuming that you got good service. Where do we go from here? Well, companies do what DoorDash and Uber Eats just did, raising minimum salaries. DoorDash just made the following huge announcement after a court decision didn't go their way about minimum payouts. As of December 4th, Dashers who deliver in New York City will now earn at least $29.93 per hour of active time, nearly twice New York's $15 minimum wage for other workers. This rate excludes tips and is just the minimum, so Dashers still have the opportunity to earn more than the minimum. And this is the absolute bombshell. They're now moving tipping to after checkout in preparation for increased fees, which they're going to need to pay the Dashers more money. The new regulations will force us to raise fees for orders in New York City. In order to better balance the impact of these new costs, we're moving the option of tip in the DoorDash app to after checkout. This change comes as a recommendation by the NYC Department of Consumer and Worker Protection and has been done to help ensure our platform remains affordable for all New Yorkers. So this is basically saying to me, because we're paying our delivery workers a fair wage, tipping is optional. We're not gonna put it in your face. If you wanna add a tip after you get your Dasher, totally up to you. So I think their tips are gonna go down. Will you still tip your DoorDash driver knowing they make about $30 an hour? You tell me. I found one super popular group on Reddit with 11,000 members called End Tipping that advocates for a system where US workers aren't reliant on tips. Some have even gone to such extremes as not tipping anymore, period. And I'm curious, if you're visiting New York or you live here, what's your stance on tipping? Has it gotten out of control? Today I'm going to show you a way to see some of the best sights of New York City at a fraction of the cost of what you pay for a big tour boat. For only $4, we're riding the NYC Ferry, one of the best travel hacks that most tourists have never even heard of. And I'll show you some of my favorite routes. Let's go. How do you buy tickets? You can't use a Metro card on the NYC Ferry. It is $4 one way. The easiest way to handle this is to download the NYC Ferry app and just buy your tickets before you even get to the station. The other way would be to get to any of the ferry terminals and to buy it from one of the machines. Also, if you have a big group and you're going to be taking a few of these ferries, great deal, 10 tickets for $27.50. Rockaway bound boat is one of my favorites for not just sightseeing, but actually going to Rockaway Beach. Super fun. Now, I've seen this line before, like down the block in the heat of the summer. There's some sights on this specific ride that you can't get on any tourist boat in New York City. You need to pick a nice day to do it. Always sit up top, unless it's freezing cold. The ferries have gotten really high tech. You even can order right from your phone, have everything set and go down and pick it up. Later on in the video, I may even have a beer. All right, the coolest thing about leaving from Pier 11 is you have just this straight on shot of lower Manhattan, the skyline, as you pull out. Not bad. Not a bad view at all. And one thing to keep in mind is that these boats are $4 each way. This is not an expensive tour boat. You don't have somebody on an intercom telling you what you're seeing. You're just here to enjoy the views. I love that we have all of Manhattan just trailing behind us here. One thing to keep in mind is that these are commuter ferries, so I would try to avoid peak rush hour times in the mornings and in the late afternoons, just so you have more space to yourself. And now we're approaching one of my favorite bridges in the city, Verrazano. We are going under it. And as I said before, I don't know any other boat that will take you under this bridge. Island is completely deserted. The beach is empty. Normally on a hot summer day, you would see it absolutely packed. It is deserted because of these insane winds. We can see the skyline all the way in the distance. This feels like I'm at the Jersey Shore right now with a bridge like this. The fact that they have a few outlets on the main deck is actually really useful, especially because your ticket is on your phone. You are coming back in the same direction. You do have to exit, get back in line, and head back. I really insist you come to Rockaway Beach for an entire morning or afternoon. Check out the beach, check out the food, check out the beer. Really nice scene here. Of all of the ferries on this video, this is the one if you just want to dedicate to straight up sightseeing, take this. If you have 2 hours, take this ride. Since we just came back from Rockaway, we've got 2 hours to transfer for free. So we're jumping on the next line, included. True story, this is the only line I have not done before this video, and I'm most excited for it. You can already see those bridges. I already see where we're heading. I've heard a lot of tour guides use this acronym, but it's BMW, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Williamsburg Bridge, in order, if you want to remember it. Amazing how many ways you can do the Brooklyn Bridge. Biked it, walked it, going underneath it with a ferry, and I see the people walking right now. This view never gets old, I'm not gonna lie. It never ever gets old. Tip for you before you take the ferry. It's 75 degrees right now and I need this jacket. It is a lot colder on the water, it's a lot windier on the water, so you're almost guaranteed to need a jacket for this. This is by far the most relaxing way to experience New York, I have to say. A lot of the tour boats of New York, the dinner cruises, the Circle Lines, great in their own way, of course, and I think worth the money. But for the budget option, they actually don't go really beyond the Williamsburg Bridge. If you want to go past that on the East River, ferry is pretty much the best way to do it. Because we're passing Roosevelt Island. I love taking the tram there. And then the Queensboro Bridge, okay? Now, if you saw our video about what to do in the summer in New York, we biked over it. Now, for the first time that I can remember, I'm actually going under the bridge on ferry. It's a first for me. Beautiful bridge, too. Very underappreciated, I think, by most non-New Yorkers. It's Gracie Mansion, yes, thank you. In your video? Sure. You could take over, you're better than me. You're way better than me. One of the reasons I didn't jump out here is I wanted to go under both the RFK and the Hellgate Bridge. And I've never been underneath either of those bridges before. All right, look at the RFK. Passing probably the last place you want to end up on a trip to New York City, Rikers Island, which is the largest and most notorious jail in New York, with an estimated 10,000 or so inmates passing some time there. And we will leave it at that. So we went under 6 different bridges and we see 2 more up there, the Whitestone and the Throgs Neck Bridge. A tour company could have just done this and called it the New York Bridges Tours. I think the final piece to this puzzle is when you look straight down at all the places we passed and I just see the entire Manhattan skyline, clear as can be. It was commuting in style, I gotta say. I don't have this much fun taking the subway. All due respect to Circle Line, I've taken them before. They are literally going the exact same path as the ferry for about, I don't know, 9 or 10 times more money. Now, if you're planning on walking the Brooklyn Bridge, this is why you need to take this boat. Take the ferry to Dumbo, and then you walk back over the Brooklyn Bridge, so you only have to do it once, and you are walking towards the skyline. This is absolutely an amazing idea. Couldn't even get a seat on this, but it doesn't matter because we are just going one stop 4 minutes. If you have the ability, pick a nice day to do this, not such a windy day to do this. This is a good like intro to New York ferry. I kind of put this on like your requirement. You're required to take this ferry ride, one stop. You visit New York. And now you've got a few options at your disposal. You can explore Dumbo, which I highly recommend you do. And of course, walk back right there to Manhattan via the Brooklyn Bridge. New York City has some big changes coming, from prices going up on the subway, new technology that could stop fare evasion, and a first-of-its-kind program to charge congestion pricing for cars. You don't want to miss this. There are so many changes coming to the New York subway that were just announced in the last 2 weeks that we could have dedicated the entire video just to that. Start with what the city is trying to do to combat fare evasion. Now, back in May, the MTA came up with a 124-page report on MTA fare and toll evasion, and boy, were there some interesting stats in there. The MTA estimates it lost $285 million in 2022 to subway fare evasion, or an average of 400,000 riders a day not paying. Think of it this way. Enough people don't pay their fare every day to fill up Yankee Stadium 8 times. 45% of fare evasion occurred as people walked through open emergency exit doors. Now, one of the recommendations of the report on the very last page was about using artificial intelligence to combat this. And this was all over the news in the city last week as it was announced 7 stations are using AI technology to help track fare evasion. And I'm sure some find this controversial because the company that created this software is from Barcelona, where that information was being reported to local law enforcement. MTA Communications Director Tim Mitten says the video recorded by the software through the transit system's 10,000 surveillance cameras are stored on the MTA servers for a limited period, while another spokesman said the AI-powered surveillance doesn't report those who avoid paying their fare to NYC law enforcement, but declined to clarify if that would ever change. I'm really curious all your thoughts on this. This is the first I've ever seen of this sculpture. It looks like a real tourist favorite right now. Now, one action the MTA is taking right now to stop fare evasion is preventing something called backcocking. Now, get your heads out of the gutter. Let me give you a little demonstration. Basically, it looks something like this, where you pull it back and then you slip through. Yeah, they have not fixed this turnstile yet. Now, 26 turnstiles have already been overhauled to change the mechanics of this, and they're eventually going to correct the other 3,479. Now, this is not going to stop people from hurtling over the turnstiles, which is what I tend to see happening. Now, one interesting proposal that I do think could help was on page 73 of the report. It talked about adding tall plexiglass doors to prevent people from either jumping over, and I've even seen this, from crawling underneath. But the bottom line is that the MTA is losing a lot of money, and they're not very happy about it. What probably comes as no surprise to anybody, including myself, is that fares are going to rise on the New York subways and buses from $2.75 to $2.90, a 5% increase beginning on August 20th. This is the first fare raise in 4 years. Officials say that this is going to raise approximately $300 million annually for the MTA, but it doesn't end there. The LIRR, the Metro North, are also going up by 4% on August 6th, and tolls on 9 MTA bridges and tunnels will rise an average of 5.5%, and as much as 10% for those who don't have Easy Pass. 7-day unlimited Metro cards are going to rise from $33 to $34. 30-day unlimited Metro cards are going to rise from $127 to $132. There is one bit of good news out of this. The MTA said that their 7-day best fare cap will allow Omni customers to start their 7-day fare capping period any day of the week instead of only on Mondays. And if you watched my Subway Survival Guide video, I was complaining that I don't think Omni was made for tourists who want unlimited trips. Now, it actually could work out. For the first time on the channel, we're gonna mention a word that will boil the blood of a lot of my local drivers. Congestion pricing, and this is just full of controversy. Now, New York may become the first city in the US to charge drivers a fee to head into its most congested areas. In this case, it would be an easy pass charge driving south of 60th Street of as much as $23. It's already gotten the green light from the Federal Highway Administration last month and will likely go live next spring. Now, I want you to imagine you're driving into the city from New Jersey to catch a Broadway show. You're spending $14.75 to cross a GW at a peak period with Easy Pass, then potentially $23 more to drive to Midtown. That's nearly $40, and we haven't even factored in if you're paying for parking yet. More on New Jersey's reaction to this in a little bit. People always ask me about booking observation decks too far in advance. If you booked One World right now, you would have quite a foggy view. There are some caveats here. If you're just driving, let's say through the West Side Highway or the FDR Drive, as long as you don't enter certain streets, you won't get charged. So you still could drive from Jersey to visit friends in Brooklyn and take the Brooklyn Bridge, and you won't get charged that congestion pricing. Cabs, Uber drivers, and Lyft drivers will only be charged once a day, and there will be discounts for overnight workers and low-income drivers who live south of 60th Street, although my question is, will your Uber and Lyft costs go up because of this? Now, New York is set to join other global cities like Singapore, Stockholm, and London, which already have their own variations on this congestion pricing. Do you think New York needs it? And I'll tell you who doesn't think New York needs congestion pricing. New Jersey. Governor Phil Murphy is suing the federal government for giving New York the green light on this. Murphy said New Jersey should have been at the table when this tolling program was devised. New Jersey does not have a representative on the board. And in another interesting twist, Staten Island is looking to possibly join New Jersey and file a lawsuit against the MTA. Things are getting heated. Nevertheless, the city is already installing readers on the west side of Manhattan, and this could bring in the MTA upwards of $1 billion. Yes, $1 billion annually. And speaking of prices going up, if you are running your air conditioner a lot in New York, it's gonna cost you. Bills are anticipated to rise an estimated 9.1% next month under a Public Service Commission decision made last week. A typical Con Ed customer who uses 600 kilowatt hours of electricity in a month will see bills increase by $14.44 in August. In January 2024, another 4.2%, or $7.20, and in January 2025, that customer's bill would rise a third time by 1.4%, or $2.43. We can't complete this video without discussing every New Yorker's favorite topic, and that's the rent going up. And this article on Investopedia says it best: New York City rents are breaking records and are expected to keep growing. Median rent in Manhattan for May broke the record high for the third month in a row as it rose to $4,395, up from April's median of $4,241. Rent is up nearly 10% year over year. Records were also set in Brooklyn, and rents were at their second highest ever in Northwest Queens. Now, Queens intrigues me a lot. In Northwest Queens, the median rent was the second highest on record at $3,402. So neighborhoods right now like Long Island City and Astoria are absolutely on fire, where I think in the last few years, Brooklyn got a bit more of the attention as a lot of people are leaving Manhattan. The bottom line is the city just keeps getting more expensive. It was actually tied for first in the world with Singapore on the Economist Intelligence Report for most expensive place in the world to live, and this New Yorker is not the least bit surprised.
What's new in New York for 2024? In this video, we're filling you in on some exciting new attractions, food destinations, and even Broadway shows so you don't miss out this coming year. The Beam at Rockefeller Center. This is the most controversial new attraction in New York for 2024 because if you're afraid of heights, this could terrify you. The Beam opened in December and it pays tribute to the iconic 1932 photo Lunch atop a skyscraper depicting 11 iron workers lunching precariously on a steel beam. Now, the good news is you'll at least be wearing a harness for this. It's a 90-second experience as the beam lifts you into the air and spins you around for what is likely to be a view you won't soon forget. I'm not the biggest fan of heights, and I'm even interested in trying this. Tickets start at $40 to get access to Top of the Rock, and this is an add-on for $25 extra dollars. Would you try this? Tell me in the comments. I'm curious. Field of Light. I predict this will be the most popular new attraction of 2024 because it's free, spanning more than 6 acres on Manhattan's east side from 38th to 41st Street, east of First Ave at Freedom Plaza. British artist Bruce Monroe has displayed this all over the UK and US. New York got its version on December 15th, 2023, and it will run for 12 months. It's pretty self-explanatory. You'll walk winding paths around 19,000 low-light fiber optic stem spheres that will illuminate with a slow, subtle change of hue. Of course, this starts after dusk every night as you'll be surrounded by the UN, the Manhattan skyline, and even the East River. I think it's really open to interpretation, but Monroe is trying to create an emotional response to anyone who walks through it. Now, the bad news is tickets are sold out through February, but on February 1st, they will release tickets for March, and that could be the play the first of the month to get tickets for the next month. The good news is if it's sold out when you come, you can still see it from above. The best views are near 38th Street and First Ave through the fence. The installation will be lit for the winter season, Thursday through Saturday evenings 5 to 9 p.m. This may be the most exciting update for the video. Some of my all-time favorite cheap eat spots from the outer boroughs are expanding into Manhattan. So if location was holding you back, you've got no excuses now. Utopia Bagels opening a Manhattan location this summer, and I am so picky about bagels growing up in North Jersey, and Utopia Bagels in Whitestone, Queens absolutely blew my mind when we filmed there. It's as good as it gets in the city, not to mention their amazing sandwiches if you want to get fancy. And now you can walk from Midtown Manhattan because they're opening a new outpost on 34th and Lex at some point in the summer of 2024. Manhattan just got really lucky. Dad's Deli in Hollis, Queens was my favorite sandwich of 2023. Their oxtail mac patty went viral internationally because it's absolutely mouth-watering. And now they have a location in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. So you've got Dad's Deli not too far from Cass's Deli, two sandwich icons back to back. Lucia's of Avenue X now has a Lucia's of Soho on Canal Street, and this is seriously one of the most underrated pizza spots in Brooklyn, with a spot on Canal in Lower Manhattan. Now everybody is gonna find out how good that vodka slice is. They've even got a perfect 5.0 on Google so far after being open only a month in Manhattan, and New Yorkers are picky reviewers. Speaking of eating, New York is looking to make outdoor dining permanent, which was one of the few bright spots during the pandemic. But there are some restrictions here, the biggest being they can't be set up from November 30th to March 31st to allow for snow plowing. The rules aren't officially set, but according to the New York Times, restaurants can offer outdoor dining from 10 a.m. until midnight and will for the first time be required to pay fees based on their location and square footage, with higher fees in Manhattan south of 125th. Restaurant owners will have a phased-in period stretching to as late as November 2024 to comply. Where are my Broadway fans at? There are about 16 shows that are slated to open in 2024, and the theme this year seems to be revivals. Here are some of the ones I find most interesting. Prayer for the French Republic. This won multiple off-Broadway awards following its 2021 world premiere, and it opens on Broadway January 9th. 5 generations apart, members of one French-Jewish family face down the same fears of anti-Semitism and hopes for their safety in their longtime home. The Notebook, beginning February 10th, the new musical adaptation of Nicholas Sparks' novel, and no, ladies, Ryan Gosling will not be reprising his movie role. The Who's Tommy, beginning March 8th, the Pinball Wizards making a return. This one is on my personal list because I want to experience The Who's 1969 album, Tommy, in a theater. And a cool bonus, this is staged by the original Broadway Productions director, Des McAnuff. The Outsiders, opening March 16th. Much like The Notebook, this coming-of-age high school story has moved from book to cinema and now on to Broadway. I'm a big fan of the movie, and The Outsiders focuses on a band of Tulsa greasers whose brotherhood may be rocky, but it's their only source of support as they come of age. Stay gold, Pony Boy. Hell's Kitchen, Alicia Keys fans, where you at? You're gonna love this. Hell's Kitchen, a love letter to her home city and the title neighborhood where she grew up. It sets the story of a teenage girl's coming of age to all of Keys' biggest songs. This opens April 1st. Cabaret. This is going to be the third revival of Cabaret on Broadway this spring at the August Wilson Theater, which will be fully transformed into the Kit Kat Club. This production won 7 Olivier Awards in London and should be a hit in New York. Uncle Vanya, the Chekhov classic, back on Broadway in April for the first time in 24 years, and who loved The Office, a 40-year-old virgin? Steve Carell stars as Uncle Vanya. It's about a family turned upside down as more relatives move in by Pulitzer and Tony-nominated writer Heidi Schreck. The Wiz, the first Broadway revival of this musical, is planned for March 2024, which will star Wayne Brady in the title role. The Wiz was groundbreaking in its 1975 premiere for putting a vibrant black cultural spin on the Wizard of Oz tale. Our Town. There's no exact date set yet, but Our Town is coming back to Broadway for fall 2024. Tony Award winner Kenny Leone will direct this play about neighbors George Gibbs and Emily Webb. It's arguably one of the best American plays ever written and a no-brainer to see once it comes out. From Broadway to museums, there's some cool ones coming to the city in 2024. The Universal Hip Hop Museum will open at hip hop's birthplace in the Bronx. The $80 million exhibit space will feature items such as a giant oil painting of Kanye West and Snoop Dogg's bicycle from the short-lived MTV sketch show Doggy Fizzle Televizzle. It will also beam out live musical performances, breakdancing sessions, and fashion shows that can be viewed online. Mercer Labs at the Museum of Art and Technology redefines the museum experience. Many of you may have already been here, as it's in the old building that housed Century 21. Through 15 experimental exhibition spaces, interactive experiences, unique listening encounters, and immersive installations, the relationship between art and technology is redefined. I'm really curious how this will play out. It's opening this month. Tickets start at $52. The Stonewall National Monument Visitor Center opening June 2024, commemorating the spot that served as a turning point for the LGBTQ+ civil rights movement. The mission is to preserve, advance, and celebrate the legacy of the Stonewall Rebellion. You'll meet the advocates and pioneers who came before and learn about the events that shaped the LGBTQ civil rights movement. This will be at 51 Christopher Street in the Village and will be part of the National Park System. Undergoing a comprehensive renovation, the Frick Collection is set to reopen in late 2024 in its original location on 5th Ave, facing Central Park. The Historic Museum is known for its exceptional collection of fine and decorative arts. You'll have until March 3rd to see it at its temporary location on Madison Ave. It seems like every year we get a new pier opening on Hudson River Park, and Pier 97 is set to go in the spring of 2024. Pier 97 will include a playground with water spray features, an activity field, and a gently sloping lawn, as well as an all-ages slide. The New York Botanical Garden is bringing back their orchard show from February 17th to April 21st, called Florals in Fashion. This was inspired by the connection between fashion and the botanical world. Each designer will put their personal perspective on that connection using colorful florals and specimen from the garden's collections and beyond. The Botanical Garden will invite visitors to walk the orchard runway as they're surrounded by thousands of beautiful orchids and immersive installations. Let's take a look at a few things in development beyond 2024. Plus Pool has been in the works for years, and while it won't open in 2024, it's moving forward. The 9,300 square foot pool would be filled with water filtered from, get this, the East River. They've been given a notice to proceed with due diligence on the project in the waters north of the Manhattan Bridge. So someday soon, you'll be able to swim in the East River and not potentially grow another toe. I've hinted at the transformation of One Times Square in previous updates on what's new in NYC. Now it seems 2025 is set as the grand unveiling year. This ambitious $500 million makeover will, for the first time in many years, allow public access to much of the building's interior where the Times Square ball drops. It's not just a simple renovation, it's a complete reimagining. The plan includes a state-of-the-art visitor center, an awe-inspiring viewing deck, an immersive museum experience, and 12 floors dedicated to interactive brand experiences that promise to engage and fascinate visitors. I'm hoping there's some kind of an exhibit where you can lower the Times Square ball every 10 seconds. If the museum folks are watching, please add that.